It's time.
I'm running this monkey farm now, Frankenstein!
I know I'd go from rags to riches.
Why, a 4-year-old child could understand this report. Run out and find me a 4-year-old child. I can't make head or tail out of it.
Or will I go?
Farabelli, you've got the brain of a 4-year-old boy, and I bet he was glad to get rid of it.
My fate is up to you.
Now I'd be shitting my pants if I was you.
Clips from a lot of really good movies in that intro. I hope you all enjoyed it because that's pretty much all you're going to get. Your List Sucks Top 100. Today we're going 40 through 31. My God, we still have like a month worth of these shows left. We'll get through it. It'll be all right. Scott, you won last week.
Again.
Yeah, the broken record. Yeah, just
Again.
repeating.
You keep telling us the bottom's going to drop out. When's that going to happen?
I have to say, evil dies tonight. It's a quote, a recent film. I will not be winning Your List Sucks this evening. In fact, I may be coming in last. I know, again, this whole series, I have been underestimating everyone's ability to just tank their own lists. At the same time, I can't see a world in which I finish higher than third tonight. So, guys, it's up for grabs.
All right. I don't remember who came in second last week. Arboru. I'll go to Arboru next because I said his name. Rue. Scott's not feeling confident. The king may be ready to fall off the throne there.
Look, I said it before. I think my list from here on out is legitimately a good list every time. And if you and Scott's taste don't match, I might sneak in there. Maybe. I'm going to eat my nerves. My face is going to show y'all what's happening with the Knicks. And I'm going to say my movies, and we're going to have fun.
All right. Now we'll go over to Adelaide Spence. How you feel about you? You've been surprisingly doing well. Much better than I think anybody expected you to do throughout this show so far. How you going to do tonight?
You can inflate my ego all you want, Kirk. I know I'm losing tonight. I have never been more confident in anything in my life. I'm going to be your fucking punching bag today, buddy. I have prepared.
Okay, Jake. So Scott's losing tonight. Spence is losing tonight. Rue's a strong maybe. Where are you going to fall into all that?
After Anthony Michael Hall yells, "Evil dies tonight," there's one overzealous lady in the crowd who yells, "Evil dies tonight!" And that's how I feel right now.
All right. Well, let's get into it. This is going to be our last week of regular Your List Sucks rules where nobody else gets to talk for the bottom three. So enjoy it or, however you take that. But Scott, we'll start with you. Give us your 40 through 38.
I just want to say I'm glad you said that because now Spence does not get to talk about Band Slam, which is my number 40. My number 39 is Clueless. And my number 38 is Quiz Show. Okay, this Band Slam, this is my FU pick to everyone out there who's saying that my list is boring and safe and just kowtowing to Kirk's taste because somehow this movie has shown up before in a top 100, but I think Cameron Holtzman and I are probably the only two people on earth who have this movie in our top 100. So we just both happen to be in this community. I've said this before, but this is my High School Musical. It came out around the same time for me. I was 14 years old. This was like the High School Musical for kids who were a little bit different and liked different music, and that was me. And they reference a lot of bands that I was into at the time, including my Arcade Fire, my favorite band. And so this movie it really spoke to me at the time. I watched it a lot when it came out, and then a few years ago I came across it on online or something, and I was like, oh no, like this movie probably does not hold up. I put it on, and within 2 minutes, I was like cracking up, laughing just as hard as the first time I watched it. This movie is a gem. It has such fun performances. Galen Connell, who plays the main kid, is great as Will, the band manager. Vanessa Hudgens is a ton of fun as the emo girl that he has a crush on. She has like this great, really weird way of reading her lines in the movie, and like the band breaks out in the lunchroom. She's like, he's like, how big is this band slam thing around here? And she goes, Texas high school football big. And her delivery of the line is just great. Yeah, Sam the Five is silent. The music is great. It's a legitimately funny movie. I love Lisa Kudrow as the mom. She's a very believable mom. Some of the conversations she has with Will are conversations I've had with my own mom. So look, it's not the 40th best movie of all time, but it's a movie that is personal to me, and I think it holds up. I think it is an objectively enjoyable movie. Even again, I don't expect anyone else to have it at 40, but Band Slam, please check it out. It's a ton of fun. 39, Clueless, the quintessential 90s comedy, one of my favorite comedies, period. A hilarious adaptation of the Jane Austen novel. Like this is how you do a modern adaptation of a classic work of literature like that. Great sort of period evocation of the period. The outfits and all of that are just on point. Just such a funny script as well, by Amy Heckerling. Just Cher is such a likable character. Like I think that Alicia Silverstone's performance was perfect, and what I like is the movie just has a real affection for her at the beginning. Like she's vapid, yeah, she's kind of dumb, but the movie still sees the best in her, and the rest of the movie is about her like realizing how like that she can be a good person. Like when she helps the teachers fall in love, like she does it at first because she wants to get a good grade, but then once she actually sees the romance that develops between them, she's like, oh, this is so sweet, and it just like it starts to turn her into a good person. Again, she starts out doing things because she thinks it's going to benefit her, but then she turns out to enjoy them because they turn out to be just good things to do. And Brittany Murphy is a lot of fun as the girl Ty, who is the new girl in school. It's a really funny, sweet movie, and I think it holds up. It's very of the era, but it also holds up to this day. I think it pulls off that balance really well. So Clueless is a classic. And then my 38 is Quiz Show. This movie is very underrated. I don't know why it doesn't get talked about more. I said this the last time I watched it, but this is like a Aaron Sorkin movie that wasn't written by Aaron Sorkin. Like the dialogue has that snap to it. Paul Attanasio wrote the screenplay, former film critic. It's one of my favorite screenplays, honestly. It has that snap to it. It's like a story that you feel like you could see Sorkin taking on. It has some like theatrical moments to it, particularly John Turturro, who is this, very gregarious guy, Herbert Stemple, who is like the champion when the movie starts on this game show 21. He ends up getting basically bought out because he's a Jewish guy, and people don't, the audiences don't respond to him because of that. So it turns into a really interesting movie about class and race. And Charles Van Doren, who's Ray Fiennes' character, becomes the new champion and is like this all-American, from an elite family, intellectual guy. And so it's about like the revolution of television, and the way that just like permeated everyone's homes. You see all these scenes of everyone like watching the game show just captivated in front of the TV. And it's also a really smart movie about, again, the choices we make to platform certain people due to demographic factors and, the way that we think audiences are going to respond. Rob Morrow gives a great performance as like the lawyer who ends up investigating all of this. It kind of turns into like this investigative thriller, which is cool. Some of the scenes between him and Van Doren are really tense because they like each know things about the other person, but like aren't ready to reveal them yet. And Paul Scofield also got nominated for an Oscar. He plays Van Doren's dad. He just has some really great scenes as like this old guy college professor. One of my favorite lines is he's like, if you look around the table and you can't tell who the sucker is, it's you. A lot of smart dialogue in the movie, and a great cameo by Martin Scorsese as well. So Quiz Show is a movie that should get talked about more, especially in this community where we're all about playing trivia. That's why we're all here. this is a movie about a game show first and foremost. So I love the movie. And Robert Redford, it's weekly Robert Redford shout out because he directed it.
All right. Band Slam. Finally got to see this. Finally watched this after hearing you talk about it for however long. Top 100, you're nuts. You're insane for putting us on your top 100. That being said, it wasn't a horrible movie. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was batting down the hatches for a pretty terrible experience. Wasn't that bad. Felicia Hudson's, I'm not a fan of her affectation in this movie. Just didn't do it for me. The main kid, the dollar store Shia LaBeouf. I don't know what he was doing. He kept making these faces where I thought he was going to pull out a gun at some point and make this a completely different movie because he just looks like a psychopath through half of it. But it was all right. I mean, I'd put it above. I mean, I think it's a step above whatever, High School Musical or whatever you're talking about. It's. I saw it was like School of Rock without any of the grown-ups. Like that was basically the plot of this whole movie. So again. Not even talk about it in sense of top 100 because that's nonsense to talk about. But it's okay. Clueless, on the other hand, I'm not a big fan of. I said before talking about other movies where I'm just not a fan of characters who are based on a stereotype or just a type of character or caricature, and that's all she is in this. And I can't get past that. I just really don't like this movie. And then Quiz Show it's a really good, solid adult drama. And I've seen it once and I don't remember a whole lot about it. It didn't stick with me a lot. So it's it's a great movie. But I didn't personally connect with it on the first watch. I really enjoyed it. It's just like a look at that time period and especially like television that time period and what that was like. I thought that was really cool. Totoro's really great in it. Yeah, solid pick. Again, that's top 100 worthy, no problem. Hit or miss bottom 3 here. We'll see where it goes from here. But let's move on to Spence and Spence's bottom 3.
I'm losing the Band Slam tonight. I'm going to commit fucking murder. My 40 is one of the best comedies of the 2010s, Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping. My number 39 is Blind Spotting.
Yikes to a future episode.
Hell yeah. My number 38 is Point Break. So, Pop Star. It's fucking hilarious. I think it parodies the music industry really well. I love everything that Andy Samberg has, or I won't say everything. I love what Andy Samberg does as an actor. I think he has like this really interesting quality of sort of he plays really dumb fucking characters who you think would just delve into really obnoxious territory. But he always makes them like likable and engaging and interesting. And this movie just pulls it off really well. Where he creates someone who is just so unaware of who he is and is an absolute douchebag, but you keep wanting to follow him and see what his journey is. And the fact that they're able to keep such a strong tone throughout the whole movie is fantastic. All the songs in it are genuinely like fun and good songs. Like I listened to So Humble and Equal Rights and Finest Girl over and over and over. This is one of the best comedies 2010, one of the best music films of the 2010s, just fucking firing on all cylinders. I don't give a shit if you don't like it, Kirk. This is amazing. And Point Break. Kirk gave this a 0.5 star. And you know what? That's about 4 to 4.5 stars too low. Because it's one of the best action films of the 90s. Maybe the best decade for action films, so you know it's fucking top tier. Just surfing, robbing, very homoerotic scenes. Everything I need from a movie, really. Keanu Reeves is just such a fun actor to watch because is he ever like amazing? No, but I want to watch everything he's in. Like he's like Christopher Walken, where it's just like, oh yeah, he's like acting, not really, and he's so engaging. It's such a fun. And Patrick Swayze, genuinely a really interesting character in this film. Like his performance is like not incredible, but I want to watch Bodhi just sort of do his shit, and I want to see him succeed. And his rationale for it is so fucking engaging. But also, like, they're literally fucking surfing around to rob banks. And Gary Busey, rarely sane, awesome in this film. I love him and Johnny Utah's like fucking camaraderie. Just one of the most watchable films ever. And if you don't like it, well, you probably like the fucking Penguins, I guess. I don't know. Great fucking movie.
I don't know what that means. But okay, we'll start with Popstar. Spence, you ended your list last week, or towards the bottom of your list. I don't know if it was the last one or not, but towards the end of the show yesterday, you talked about the one of the worst music parodies of all time with Walk Hard. And today, you totally redeem yourself with Popstar, one of the best musical parodies of all time. I love this movie. I don't want to like Andy Samberg or Lonely Island. Like, I should hate them. And they walk that line so finely of just between like ridiculous and funny and just so ridiculous and stupid that's unwatchable. And they do that tightrope act. And this movie is a perfect example of it. He just takes that character that is basically, that pop star type, and that you think those people are in real life, and just kind of like cocks it on its head just slightly, just a little bit, like not to the point where you think it's so insane. Like it's still kind of plausible, but at the same time ridiculous. And I love what he does with this character. I just love like the day of the life stuff that, the guy who he pays to punch him in the nuts to make him remember where he comes from, that kind of stuff. Like, that is so fantastic. The supporting cast really solid. Tim Meadows, of course, again, we'll give a shout out to Tim Meadows because he's fantastic at everything. And he's just a perfect fit for a comedy like this. But yeah, I really like this movie. Like I said, I shouldn't. It's not a me movie at all. But these guys take those concepts and that comedy that isn't me and somehow make it for me. So yeah, that's a solid pick. I'll go with that. On the other hand, Point Break. Point Break has some really nice looking surfing scenes. And that is the only thing possibly nice I could say about this. The rest of this movie is absolute garbage. This movie sucks on every aspect. The acting is terrible. The story is terrible. The dialogue is terrible. The cinematography is terrible. There is nothing good or positive can be said about this movie. It's an awful action movie. It's like the worst of what the 90s have to offer. It's almost a parody of 90s action movies because it's that bad. Like, to think like, oh, they really were trying on this. Just the way they talk to each other, just how everybody screams for no reason, just yelling at each other all the time. I've used this comment before. Those two cops, they're like making fun out of Gary Busey for thinking it's surfers. And you're like, no, you have no reason to be insulted for this. Like, he has very good evidence as to why these are surfers. Why are you making fun out of him for this? Just because that's the kind of movie this is, where everybody has to yell and insult each other because, like, that's their substitute for real drama or conflict. No, this movie is absolute trash. So you're 50-50 right now, Spence, because that Point Break is going to be a tough hole to dig out of. Amaru, let's move on to you and your bottom three, 40 through 38.
All right. My number 40 is Logan. My number 39 is Warrior. And my number 30.
What?
And my number 38 is my favorite Mission Impossible movie, Mission Impossible 3. All right. Logan. Patrick Stewart was utterly robbed of an Oscar nomination for this film. If it wasn't titled Logan, and then they just took everything X-Men out of it, he would have been a shoo-in for Best Supporting Actor. And that kind of sums up how great this film is. It is absolutely amazing. I'm not a fan of Westerns, but I'm a fan of comic book movies, and it's the perfect blend of both. I will say, even though I love the scene, the stop at Eric LaSalle's house does bring the pace down a little bit too much, and the clone X-24 is a little over the top. However, it makes for a badass ending action sequences and how much he's actually whooping Logan's ass. So that's great about it. But the movie does old man Logan so well. It's an homage to Hugh Jackman. It's an homage to the character. It's an homage to Professor X. And Daphne Keane as X-23 as Laura is just visceral, and it's like a passing of the torch. I think this movie is phenomenal, and I will never not say that Patrick Stewart was robbed of a fucking Oscar nomination for this film. So yeah. And then 38, Mission Impossible 3. Mission Impossible 3, again, one of the best action franchises to have ever done it. And for me, I've said it before, I say it again, if you have a great villain, you have my money. And you are one of my more favorite films in a franchise. And Philip Seymour Hoffman is just utterly scary as shit in this film. They have the ensemble. They have the one-off people that go, you see with Maggie Q and Jonathan Rhys Meyers, because I say Davies so much in my head, that show up for one movie and are great additions to Ving Rhames. Oh my gosh, Sean, whatever his name is. Why am I saying Penn and Bean and Simon Pegg? I said Sean. Simon Pegg, thank you. Simon Pegg, the introduction of Benji, absolutely hilarious. Tom Cruise is good in this. It's just greatly paced, great action, the best villain. The one-liners Lawrence Fishburne just pitches in this just hit every fucking time. It's the most fun I have in any Mission Impossible film. And again, just the most menacing villain to pay off the opening scene of him counting down and then absolutely pay it off at the end. And then you're like, okay, so that's why that didn't work. Or that's why that Michelle Monaghan isn't actually dead. Sure, I love every second of this film. It was the turn for Mission Impossible 2. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
Okay, did somebody yikes Warrior?
Yes.
Spencer.
Okay. All right, okay, so Logan, yeah, this was just such a perfect send-off for this character. They got it so right. And the movie feels so much like that gritty X-Men Marvel feel. And I'm talking not Marvel movies, I'm talking Marvel comics. Just that sense of like things aren't going to get better. That very pessimistic feel that Marvel comics have is captured so well in this movie. X-23 is great. Stephen Merchant's Caliban is fantastic. It's just just taking just a character that's been in all these big blockbusters and making such a relatively small movie about him and such a character-driven movie about him and doing it so well. This could have so easily fell on its face. I'm like over the R-rated superhero genre, but this one does it great. Like I think it really earns, except for Hey Driver. That's like the one thing we're like, okay. But the rest of the movie is very much earns that, like uses the R rating to its advantage, and you see like, okay, yeah, this definitely has to be R-rated. But yeah, this is a great pick. This is something I haven't gone back to enough, and I need to. And this could be one of my top superhero movies. It definitely deserves to be. It's like on a technical level, it is one of the best. Like it rises above the genre in so many ways.
It is a rough movie to go back to because it's a lot to watch.
Yeah, it is. But it's fantastic. That's a good pick. And then Mission Impossible 3. I like this one. And Philip Seymour Hoffman obviously is the main reason. I mean, he's the selling point of this. He's so good in this. Just that kind, like he's a very like the character itself is a very stereotypical, spy movie villain. And on the page, I don't think there's a lot there, but he takes it and just makes it so unique and so scary. And you look at Philip Seymour Hoffman, you don't think scary, but he does it so well in this. And I just love the little things in this movie, like how, a lot of future movies, like so much of the technology is just a given and it's just there. I love the scenes where like they're making the mask and they're uploading the voice chip and everything, and just it gives it just such more like a grounded feel. And it says like a lot more. I mean, obviously not as much as the first. I haven't seen the second one, but the first one was very much just like we talked about before, just like a spy movie. The other ones kind of get a little more outrageous. This one feels like in the middle, where it still feels like has a little bit of that real world spy feel to it. So yeah, this one was a lot of fun. That's it for your bottom three. So Jake, 40 for 38.
At number 40, I have The Fly. At number 39, I have Minority Report.
Yikes.
And
yikes. Just yikes.
Oh, cool. And at number 38, I have Heat, which I think has already been yikesed.
Yeah, I had that earlier.
Okay. So The Fly. The Fly, I think David Cronenberg's The Fly. I think there's a case to be made that Jeff Goldblum's casting and performance in this is like maybe the greatest of all time. The movie demands certain things of this character. It's basically like it opens with like, what if there was a sexy scientist, right? It's like sexy scientist, that wasn't really a thing. It's like he's got to be nebbish and dorky, but he also needs to fuck. Like that's what the movie is for the first little bit. And Jurassic Park a few years later ends up basically like plagiarizing his casting and using him again as a scientist who fucks. But this movie also is like, you're also going to need to transition into being part fly and part man. And the movie, he does that too. He turns this sexy scientist character that on paper shouldn't work, and then starts interweaving fly DNA with this character. And rather than being campy at all, it's just downright disturbing and tragic. So I love The Fly. It's a movie that like shouldn't work, but it just does perfectly. And skipping over Minority Report to go to Heat. Heat. Growing up, this was one of my dad's favorite movies, so I watched this over and over again. I think this is the best Michael Mann movie. It's his most operatic work. It's taking Pacino and De Niro and reuniting them on screen for the first time that they actually share scenes, I believe, because in The Godfather Part 2, they don't actually share the screen. Even though they only briefly share the screen in this. And this is just one of the most effortlessly cool movies. I wish that they made movies like this still. It feels like the new version of this kind of macho brutality has been replaced by some sort of edginess or something. And yeah, I really fucking love Heat. There's a podcast where they do minute by minute Heat, and I could listen to that. I should listen to that.
And there's also, and I had this as well, this week, actually, if you listen to the rewatchables, they did Heat for the third time, and they had Michael Mann on the episode. And it's fascinating to listen to him talk about the movie. Like, I highly, highly recommend
Give us
the
a
podcast.
tidbit from it.
Yeah, so I was gonna say the diner scene, which is obviously which is to me is the best scene in the movie, despite the fact that there's all these mind-blowing action scenes. Like the best scene is like when these two guys just sit down in a diner. But he talks about how he chose this particular diner because like everything in the diner is like black and white, and when the way he shot the scene, like he didn't want there to be anything in the background distracting you whatsoever. He wanted it to be like all completely neutral. You're not looking at anything in the frame, you're just looking at these guys and you're just focusing on what their words are. And it comes across in the scene because it's just like one of the most riveting scenes of two people talking, and especially when you just combine like the mythos of Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, like how much it was like built up that here they're finally going to like share a scene together, and then for it to be that scene and for it to just be so perfectly executed is amazing. But yeah, this is just an amazing movie, just the coolest movie. Yeah, it's just a great movie about guys being dudes, basically, for 3 hours.
Hell yeah.
Great action. Again, Pacino's performance is just unhinged in the best possible way. Like this is where he starts to like, I feel like just become like that Al Pacino that we all know him to be. But like he still has enough like the grounded moments. But like when he loses it, it is some of the funniest stuff ever, and intentionally so. Or he's improvising. Like the TV set scene where he just destroys the TV set is just unbelievable. But it's a great psychological story between these two guys where again you see both sides of the equation, right? Like Neil McCauley is like kind of a disturbing, he is a disturbing like criminal, but you still like identify with the way that he goes about his job in such an efficient and effective like manner, in the same way that Al Pacino does as the cop. Plus, it's hard to see like Neil McCauley as being like super evil when you have like one of the most evil dudes ever in this movie, one of the most evil characters ever in Waingro, played by Kevin Gage. And Kevin Gage actually went to prison in real life, and everyone referred to him as Waingro in prison, which is just another fun fact. But yeah, he is just like amazing. Like I don't have anything else to say except Michael Mann facts, as Paul said in the chat. Go listen to that Rewatchables episode.
All right. We'll get back to Heat. Let's talk about The Fly for a minute. Fly might be one of the most perfectly paced horror movies of all time. You know, it's 90 minutes. There's basically just 3 characters. It opens in the middle of Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis's first conversation, and it ends as soon as the story ends. And there's no fluff to it. That's one of the things I love so much about this movie is the pacing. Goldblum is amazing. He's perfect in it. Gina Davis is really good. The effects, for the most part, are really solid. There's some stuff with the makeup and the costumes where you can see like seams and stuff where there's some flaws there, but there's so much great just the wall crawling effects, and it's horrifying. I think it does a great job of taking like a cheesy old 50s horror movie, like drive-in horror movie, and kind of keeping respecting the framework but totally making it something new. This is a really solid pick. This is another one, if I rewatch this enough, could end up floating around my top 100 because it's just such a well-made, well-crafted movie. Skip Minority Report. Heat. Yeah, Heat is great. I just think they caught Pacino. Obviously, I wish they'd done more work together, but I think they caught the two of them just at such a great point in their careers, because that mid-90s time is when, before they really started to become what we see now with the both of them kind of be a little bit parody of themselves. They're still, completely, firing all cylinders, but they have that age and that experience that comes through a lot in this movie. I just love the relationship between the two of them. I love that they're completely on the opposite ends. They're complete enemies, but at the same time, they get each other, and no one else in their lives gets them. And so they have that connection. I love that so much. I love movies about people who come together because they have absolutely nobody else and for no other reason. I love those movies where it's just like, this is it. We understand. And that's what's so great about the diner scene is they're just two sides. Like you said, it's got two sides of the same coin, and they both have that drive. They both have that passion. They both have that code they live by. And they're just two such great characters. The thing that really keeps this from being just a super high tier movie to me is the length and just all the other stuff that isn't them. Once the subplots start to pop up, I kind of lose interest a little bit. It's so much about Pacino, so much about De Niro, that I don't care that much about Val Kilmer. I don't care that much about Natalie Portman. I just want to see these two. If this was a 2-hour and 10-minute movie with just the two of them, this would be a 5-star all-time great movie for me. But it's still a really solid pick. So nobody else had Heat, right?
Surely you at least care about Dennis Haysbert, the poor truck driver who just gets shafted in the movie.
All right, let's move on to the meat of the order. Scott, let's just start with your 37.
Jesus, take the wheel. Dazed and confused.
Yikes.
No, you already had it, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what I thought.
Okay. So here we go. This is my first Linklater movie actually on my list. It will not be the last, as a surprise to no one. I know what Kirk's take is on this movie, and here's what I will say. I think it's a weird take because I think the entire movie is told from a completely judgment-free perspective. That's what Linklater is all about. He is not saying that any character is the good guy, the bad guy. I mean, O'Banion's a little bit of a douche, but everybody is just, they are people, and he is not judging any of them for their behavior because they're high school kids. They're expressing themselves, and the characters that you like or the characters that you identify with almost say more about the viewer than it does about anything that Linklater is doing in the movie. That's what I will say, because again, there's a real freedom about the way that he directs all of these characters. And if you look into the way that this movie was, the filming of this movie, all the actors felt like it was just such an inspirational experience for them. And they still talk about how it was because he just let them exist, right? They were high school kids at the time. They had parents or whatever who might have had requirements and stuff for them. But Linklater was he wasn't their dad. He was just I want you to just live your truth. And I think all that comes out on screen. It's just such a fun and identifiable movie about those times in high school, those magical nights in high school when the most important things in the world seemed what girl am I going to talk to or guy am I going to talk to like at the party tonight? You know, what kind of car am I going to get the car for tonight? Who's bringing the keg? You know, all this type of stuff. And it's a very nostalgic movie. It makes you, you know, long for those high school days. It's funny. There's a lot of, you know, humorous moments. It's got great characters. And it just has, you know, that Linklater magic, the way he makes that slice of life stuff, just so captivating and makes you want to live in in his worlds with his characters. Yeah, I mean, this movie's a classic.
Yeah, I think there's a quote from a Linklater, I'll paraphrase, where he said like the producers got a hold of his cut and they were like, yeah, the scene where after the baseball game, everyone is shaking hands and saying good game, like half-heartedly, like just tapping each other's hands. They're like, that doesn't really need to be in the movie. And he was like, that's the whole point of the movie. You missed the point of the movie if you think that removing that from the movie is going to serve the ultimate goal of the movie, which it's kind of I guess it's about nostalgia. Every character in the movie, one thing almost every character has in common is they're reminiscing about how the 60s were better than the 70s. And in that, they're almost failing to see that how great they have it in this moment. So yeah, I really love this movie. I can't imagine not liking it. So Kirk, why do you hate this movie?
Two other things real quick. Incredible soundtrack. They spent like over half the movie's budget was just on getting the rights to the music. And also shout out Parker Posey. That was the other thing I forgot to say.
Yeah, you're Scott. You know my take on this, Scott. Everybody, I've talked about this movie ad nauseum. I'm tired of having to tell everybody everything that's wrong with this movie. Scott says they're all high school kids. McConaughey's not. Definitely not. And he should be judged.
In my experience, no one thinks that dude is cool. He is the weird guy that hangs around the high school. Love him.
I think the movie thinks he's cool. I think Linklater thinks he's cool.
No,
because I've said this before. I've never known a director who had such a reverence for douchebags as Linklater does. Guy loves douchebags, and he is just I don't. I mean, I harp on McConaughey because that's the most honest thing, but I don't care about anybody in this movie. I don't care. It's just such a I've talked about it a lot. Like, I'm not going to talk a ton about it because everybody knows my take on it. I've talked about it a lot. Spence and Amaru, you were smart, didn't have this on your list. Tell us why.
I put in the chat, I assume this was in Scott's top 10 because he doesn't shut up about it. So much so that I intended to watch it on my plane flight in a couple of weeks before we get to top 10s so we get a better opinion about this. I haven't seen it in like 10 years. Haven't had the chance to, so you know what? Last time I saw it, I thought it was mediocre and boring because I don't like slice of life films. Pretty simple.
I've never wanted to watch this film but probably won't.
Smart man.
Wow.
Yes, Bar. As a matter of fact, I did have that guy at my high school.
All right. Scott, let's move on to your number 36.
Yes, let's please move on. We missed Halloween by a week, but we do get my favorite scary movie of all time, The Blair Witch Project. Koho. The Blair Witch Project was the founder of found footage movies, but also the best found footage movie still. Because what this movie really understands is like the fear of the unknown is the scariest thing in the world. Because in every horror movie, when the boogeyman is revealed, there is some sort of there is some sort of tension that evaporates from the movie. Because before that, there's this, again, unknown terror about who is this guy? What does he look like? What is he capable of? That fear of the unknown. Like I said, the Blair Witch Project, you never see the Blair Witch. It is completely in your imagination. And your imagination runs wild, right? Because you start off with these documentary like sequences where they're interviewing all the people in Burkittsville, and they're all like describing the Blair Witch differently, right? So you don't know what it is. Like, was it this hermit guy, Rustin Parr, who murdered these kids? Is it some supernatural being? You have no idea, and the movie never tries to explain it to you, and so it becomes more terrifying because you're just running around in the woods looking for something, and you don't even know what it is. And again, the movie never reveals it to you, which is just a smart way of using their infinitesimal budget, but also just a great filmmaking technique. And the movie, like, again, for how little it was made for the amateurish quote unquote quality of it, like, it's a very well made movie. Like, the filmmaking techniques on display are high level. Like, there's some stuff in the final moments at the house. Like, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen the Blair Witch Project, but some of the techniques in that scene, the way that they use like sound in particular is very inventive. It's not just like a gimmick movie of like, what if it was real? Like, what if we just made this movie where it looks like everything was real? Like, this is a legit film. Also, the sad thing about this movie, like, Heather Donahue plays Heather in the movie. People hated her performance when the movie came out in 1999, and so much so that like she was like blackballed and like never had a career after this. And watching it back, it's crazy because I think they just didn't like her because she was like a woman with a strong personality. She gives a fantastic performance in this movie for an amateur actor. Like, the scene with her monologuing, the famous scene with her monologuing into the camera, it's on the poster. That is one of the most believable scenes of someone being legitimately terrified. Like, I mean, she has the snot running down her face. Like, you actually believe she is out there in those woods and she is scared for her life. So it's a great performance. The whole movie is, again, very efficient. Like you said about The Fly, I mean, it's less than 90 minutes, I think. But scary as hell, very smartly made. And I want the Criterion release so we can see the Sundance cut that has never been seen since Sundance in 1999, because there's a longer cut of the movie. And I just think in general the Criterion extras and everything would be really fascinating for this movie just because of the cultural impact it had.
Yeah, I remember this movie came out and like found footage wasn't a thing. So I mean, there were actually people, like, there was talk like, did this really happen? Did this movie really?
Yeah.
Like, people honestly didn't know. And it took a while for I think like during award season, like the cast started coming out, and that was like because like this was early internet too, so like this was like during award season they start coming on shows and stuff, and that's like when you saw, okay, they're actors, but like for like a long time people weren't sure. There's a lot of talk, and I think this is the first one. I think it's still one of the best. I think it like really set the standard. It's done so well. Just again, just more about what you don't see than what you do see, and how the camera moves, how the camera cuts. The performances are great. I think the performances, the movie lives or dies by performance, because if they're not scared, you're not scared. And how the terror that they express in this, and not just the terror, but like the dread and the frustration, like the things they go through in the daylight hours, are just as intriguing as what happens at night.
Yeah.
And this is, I remember when we saw this, me and Kathy went and saw it with some friends. We were staying with our friends. We saw it with them. We were staying at their house that night, and we were like, they're like setting us up on their fold out sofa, and we're going to bed, and they're leaving the room, and they're about to turn the light. Like, can you leave the light on? And like, I slept the light on for a week thinking about that dude in the corner, and why did he go in the corner? What made him stand in that corner? So yeah, this movie stayed with me a long time. I still watched it out. So it got, after a while, like, came out, and then like by the time it came out on video, it was like cool to be like, oh yeah, Blair Witch isn't scary. Blair Witch is scary as heck. This movie scares me every time I watch it.
Absolutely.
Really, really solid pick. Everybody else on Blair Witch.
Heather Donahue deserved an Oscar, I think.
I don't know if it'd go that far, but she is great.
I think so. I think it's one of the most original performances of the past 30 years.
I've never seen it. Just the clips.
I've never seen it. Just the clips.
Yeah, that's the other thing. That ending is so scary too, like that final shot, because like, because of the way that the film is, like, as a documentary found footage, like when the credits roll, there's never going to be an answer as to what happened.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Hey, you know what? You can watch.
Like,
you can watch Blair Witch 2,
Book of Shadows.
No.
Moving on.
The sequels never happened. Scott, what's your 35?
Video game.
Okay, let's go back to Linklater Town. Before Sunrise. the first movie in the greatest trilogy of all time, and my second favorite movie in the trilogy. Just like the best movie about spontaneously falling in love with someone, that love at first sight. This is, of course, again, the first movie in the trilogy. It's where Jesse and Celine meet on that train going to Vienna, and it's just about the magical night that they spend together. There's a Linklater documentary on the Criterion of, I forget, I think it's of the Before trilogy. It's one of the ones I have. And Ethan Hawke has a really interesting quote about, like, he says Richard Linklater makes movies that everyone feels like they could make, but no one actually could except for him. Like these simple concepts, like, oh, I'm just going to make a movie about like a people talking to each other, and that was Slacker. Or I'm just going to make a movie about a guy and a girl meeting and spending a night together. Like these simple concepts, and that was Before Sunrise. But he turns it into this like 3-movie odyssey, right? Which, like, the first time you watch Before Sunrise, you're overcome with like how wonderful this connection is between these people, and just how much you enjoy listening to them talk. And then once you come back and watch it after you've seen the other movies in the trilogy, it is like a transcendent experience because you see how well everything was set up from the beginning, how well the movies like the themes of the movies dovetail with each other. They're each 9 years apart. The movie, like, they just get better with age. They just get better the more that you've seen the other movies. Again, he's like just some of the best writing, because the movie is basically just a conversation between these characters for an hour and 50 minutes. So you have to like be engaged by what they're saying. You have to be engaged by each character, and their willingness, their open-heartedness, I guess. Their willingness to just be very honest, speak their minds, but also they are interesting people. They are not stupid people. They are smart people, and it's interesting to listen to smart people talk about the big ideas in this movie, but also just to watch them fall in love and feel like you yourself are falling in love too. And I love too, like their like decision making towards the end of like, oh, do we sleep together? They obviously want to sleep together, but it's like, but we know we're going to have to get on the train tomorrow and not see each other again. So like, do we really do it because it's going to make that connection between us probably even stronger, and we know that connection is going to have to end, or do we just kind of leave the mystery to it? I like, it's a very unique way of like bringing that together, because otherwise you just expect that the movie is just going to give you that steamy scene at the end or whatever. After all this, man, it's much smarter about that, because Linklater is just a smarter filmmaker, and Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy are just great smart performers. So Before Sunrise, again, started off the best trilogy of all time.
Anybody else have this? Look, I'm okay with movies that are dialogue heavy. Some of my favorite movies are dialogue heavy. That's fine, but not when the dialogue is just long-witted dorm room philosophy. Again, Linklater is not my guy, and this is not my movie. I do not like Ethan Hawke's character. In any other movie, Ethan Hawke's character, I feel like, would be the antagonist who's trying to steal her away from the hero by proving like he's like the douchey, long-winded, douchebag who's like, hey, look how smart I am, look how great I am, let me, take you away. And we'd have like a likable character, falling in love with Julie Delpy. But because it's a Linklater film, the long-winded douchebag is the hero. And yeah, I don't know about the rest of the trilogy, because after I watched this one, I was not interested in seeing any more. This movie it's not a long movie, but it feels long because he never shuts up. It's like, okay, we get it. You took a freshman philosophy class in comparative religion. You're so cool. Yeah, I did. And again, I mean, I feel like he's a stand-in for Linklater, him trying to tell us, like, listen to how smart I am and all the cool things I have to say about life.
And you know what he is.
I just, yeah, and it just doesn't work. I guess no one else had this. I thought at least some of you might. Tell me why.
Yeah, because everyone likes this movie except for Kirk.
Kirk, I have to say, I rarely enjoy listening to people talk about movies they hate that I like as much as I like listening to you talk about how much you hate Richard Linklater.
That's textbook
You're right.
Linklater.
He does like sympathize with characters that would traditionally be like the villainous douchebag in a movie. I never thought of it that way, but it's kind of true. Like he made a movie like that everybody wants some, which I love, which is about a frat, and it's about the less toxic side of fraternities, which is funny. I don't know. I like that movie a lot too, but really, that seems like the conclusion of your thesis, basically.
Okay. The gastrointestinal distress going on right now needs to stop.
I won't comment on it. Before Sunrise,
You'll get your chance.
It's my least favorite of the trilogy, but that's not to say that it's a bad movie. I think it's really great. I love this is a rare example of a slice of life movie that actually works for me because of the idea of like the timer on it, where it's just like you know that they're just existing and they're together, but it is impossible for it to continue basically. And seeing how they sort of like come to terms with their relationship as the time starts winding down, and they're both sort of like questioning if it was even the right decision, and then come to the end of it, they're just like, I can't let this go right away, is heartbreaking, and it's fucking great. And it's the reason I dove into Linklater when I first found him, because I saw this, like, I have to continue. And I had to marathon the other two and then go through watch his other films. It's fucking great. It's just not my pick of the three, because I think it's just a little slow, and I don't super love the characters quite yet.
I've been told for about 2 years now since I've been in this community to go watch this film, this trilogy, and I haven't done it yet. Sorry, Scott. Sorry, Peggy.
You're good.
You're not good, but it's fine. All right. 34. I guess it's slice of life night. I mean, that's just because we're getting into the high part of my list. But next I have 20th Century Women from director Mike Mills, one of my favorites. I had the pleasure of actually seeing his new movie, which is coming out in a few weeks, Come On, Come On, over the weekend. And the movies now, like the three movies he's made now, make such an interesting trilogy to me. Like you have his first movie, Beginners, which is about his dad. You have this movie, which is about his mom. Then you have Come On, Come On, which is kind of about him imparting the lessons he learned from his dad and mom to a child. So definitely watch Come On, Come On when it comes out. But anyway, 20th Century Women is a great slice of life movie and a unique perspective of this kid. Yeah, I know it's not his first movie, sorry, but in the trilogy is what I meant, the unofficial trilogy. But anyway, this kid, this teenage boy who lives in this boarding house with his mom, who's Annette Bening, this sort of hippie punk woman played by Greta Gerwig, who's like, very caught up with the era and listening to the Talking Heads and all this stuff. Is set in the 70s in California. And also Billy Crudup, who's like construction. He's like the man of the house who just like fixes everything. And then the other woman in the title is Elle Fanning, who's like the girl that he has a crush on, but is off like doing things with other boys because she's like more quote unquote mature. Just such well-written characters. Like the screenplay is amazing. I love Mike Mills' style of writing. In his movies, he has these like little interludes of like literature where like you read from like they read from books in this movie, like little portions from books that I think really adds texture to this world. The screenplays in general are just like really literary. Like the way that he describes characters, like when the characters describe other characters when they're like imparting memories of them, recounting memories of them. Like it sounds like you're reading a book, and I don't know. I just love that. It might not work for everybody, but like I love that style of writing, and it just leads to some really poetic moments. Such well written characters, like I said, and there's an unforgettable scene with Greta Gerwig at the dinner table towards the end of the movie, which I don't want to spoil. But I just love the perspective. Like I just love the perspective of like you're getting this teenage boy and the lessons he learns from three women at very different stages of their lives. It's not an experience you get to see a lot in coming of age movies. And Annette Bening says at what point, or doesn't it take a man to raise a man, or somebody says that at one point. And Annette Bening says, no, I don't think so. And that's kind of what the whole movie's about. There's a lot of just great like one-liners that just stick in your mind. And yeah, Annette Bening not getting nominated for an Oscar, if we're gonna get on the Oscar snub train, egregious. This is just a beautiful movie, and more people should check it out.
Okay, yeah, I watched this for the show, and I'm really glad you put this ahead of Before Sunrise Days is Confused, because I like this movie. I just like movies like this about, again, the relationships between people and outcasts, and their relationships between like people who just come together because they don't have anybody else, and they just kind of like form their own family. And I really like movies like about that. I love the kind of like the framing device, the way the story's told, like how everybody gets their own little segment of the movie, and like characters are introduced, but it's not till later where you get their full story, and they become more alive. Everybody gets their chance to shine. I feel like this movie's been done a lot. This kind of story. I guess Billy Crudup being in it, the relationship between the main character now Fanning, obviously feel a lot like Almost Famous and the mother and everything. And I think the story's been done, but I think the way this does it, most of those movies don't give every character a chance to really do something like this one does. Like what Annette Bening gets to do as a person in this movie, not just as the main character's mother, is really interesting. And she's great. Greta Gerwig is really good. I like her character. I like, I just like everything she does. But she's really solid in this. And yeah, I think it's a pretty solid pick. Anybody else got anything to say on 20th Century Woman?
I really like it. I barely remember a lot of it though. I got to watch it again.
Haven't seen it, but I'll just say 2016 was stacked for lead actresses.
Doesn't matter. She belonged.
This is just a sort of there movie for me. Like, no real negative thoughts about it. Again, I need to rewatch it. To me, it's sort of like I remember it sort of as like lesser Baumbach. I know he didn't do it. It gives that vibe for me. But I'm probably gonna do a binge of Mike Mills eventually, or just Gerwig as an actress because she's awesome. I need to revisit it, but no like strong feelings on this right now.
Okay, if we're done talking about 20th Century Women, we're going to bounce back over to Adelaide with your number 37.
This might be a yikes. Zodiac.
Yes, yikes to a future episode. Come on.
We'll look like Gary some other week. My number 36 is American Psycho.
Hey, Todd? What the fuck?
There are some movies which, if you look at me, you're like, you like that? A few of them will come up. This is one of them. I think that this serves as like a fascinating criticism on toxic masculinity and sort of the effect it had in 2000. I think that the idea of its place in like American capitalism and business is fascinating, and doing it all through Bateman as like this untrustworthy protagonist is so incredible. He is fucking fantastic in this movie. I think the whole journey he goes on is just really engaging, and it's you don't really question. You sort of take it as face value. It's like, oh hey, the fucking business cards. Oh, they're weird. It's a core guy. I see what he's saying, and then he just fucking brutalizes some people and starts hiring prostitutes, and it's just like no one seems to just like get what he's saying, and it's so I love what I'm forgetting her name. The director, Mary Herron. She is like the way that she frames the whole journey and taking from what I haven't read the novel, but from what I understand, Bret Easton Ellis's novel is not super aware of what it is. And then Mary Herron taking me into like this super subversive and engaging just masterwork of a film. It's one of my favorite examples of an unreliable narrator, and I think it does it so well. There's a lot of films since then. I look back like it couldn't even do this movie that most people don't even like, and this fucking accomplished so much. It's incredible. Plus, Christian Bale running naked in a hallway at like peak fitness, cannot complain.
So I watched this this week for the first time since it came out, and I don't know how to feel about it. I remember there's a Simpsons episode where they go to Epcot Center, and they're like, "Hey, let's go see what people in the '50s thought life would be like in the '80s." And I feel like watching this movie is like, what did people in the '90s think about the '80s? Like, it just has that it's like a very like skewed '90s view of the '80s. And I think it's well directed. I kind of wish she would have done more and got a bit like, I don't know, like, I'm not real familiar with the rest of her body of work. She never really got like huge.
Like one other film and that's it.
Yeah. And she's because I think that I'm not going to complain at all about the direction. I think it's a very well directed movie. The way it looks, like they use like that fisheye lens a lot, and just like the different point of view and everything. I think that's really well done. I think like the '80s satire is a little too over the top, especially with Josh Lucas and what's his name? Who's the other one that's like
Leto?
the other?
Jared
Who?
Leto.
Not Jared Leto. The other one, the other background guy. What's his name? Anyway, his friends, like his group of friends. I think it's like a little too on the nose, and it makes it like that makes for a fun horror movie where it's like, oh, it's like these like '80s like yuppie guys who one of them's a serial killer. That's interesting, but I think like it pushes too hard. Justin Thoreau, thank you, Paul.
Oh yeah.
But I think as far as like this, like the satire, like I think it just a little too hard on the nose. But I didn't hate it. I didn't think, like, again, top 100, crazy talk, but and I think Bell's good. And I think just the way Bell goes from like, and just that idea of him, like it's almost like that Dexter thing where it's like he has no feelings, he has no emotions, but he wants to like try to look it out. Like when he talks about the music, and it's obviously stuff it's not his own idea. It's like it's stuff he's read and stuff he's heard, and he's just regurgitating because he thinks that's how people are supposed to talk to each other. Like that's really interesting to me. I think that character's interesting. I think the movie just gets a little too wonky sometimes, but everybody else on American Psycho.
This movie is there. It exists. I gave two shits about it when I watched it. I could see why people like it. I can see why people hate it. I'm more on the not liking it side because it's just why the fuck am I watching this? Sure. Cool. Move along.
This almost made my list. I love this movie. It is definitely the better movie about toxic masculinity and toxic consumerism that came out between 1999 and 2000. I will leave it at that. But yeah, I'm already losing tonight. I don't really care. The movie's great. That's Christian Bale's best performance, in my opinion. And yeah, it's just like, again, toxic masculinity, toxic consumerism. It's like, what if this guy who just like consumes these products and like, there's the long sequences of him just like describing the products like he's reading an infomercial or something. What if he consumes people in the same way? Fascinating idea. Like, I think the movie is all the better for being directed by a woman because, yeah, Bret Easton Ellis is a super toxic dude. And this movie could have gone wrong in glamorizing what is going on, kind of like I feel about the other movie. But because you have Mary Harron directing it, I think that it resisted that temptation, and it's a really smart movie.
Yeah. Mary Harron, she did two things that I really like. Two other things. She did The Moth Diaries, which is like a thriller about like a boarding school that I really recommend. Super underrated. And recently for CBC here in Canada, she did Alias Grace, which is an adaptation of a Margaret Atwood novel, which is written by Sarah Polley. It is really good too. I'd recommend checking out that miniseries about the first female serial killer, basically. Yeah, I think that this movie is. I used to really love it, and now I just kind of think it's edgelord trash, to be honest. I kind of think that it's pushing a lot of buttons, like Bret Easton Ellis loves to push. And really, all it's saying is, aren't the one percenters the bad? Don't they get away with a lot and do a lot of terrible things that hurt a lot of people and don't care? Yeah, and I think there's really good moments though in the movie. It works. A lot of the comedy really works for me. It's just that ultimately, I come out of it not feeling like I gained much.
Paul, fun. Movies can be fun. That's all I gotta say.
All right, Spence, number 35.
35 is my hint movie. See if y'all guessed it. My
I don't
35 is
have it.
Lilo and Stitch.
Huh. Because of the edit.
Yep, the edit. I'm not sure if you guys know. The movie's like set in Hawaii. Joke for the chat. I love this film. It is one of my favorite Disney films ever. I think it has this great balance of comedy and joy and exploring just the universe and childhood, and also just like the depressingness of whatever of life, and how really hard it is for people to just sort of exist sometimes, and seeing that through Nani and Lilo's eyes is fantastic. I love the universe it sets up. I'm a big supporter of not only like the sequel films that aren't eligible for this because TV movies don't count, but the TV show is so great, and seeing how all the experiments sort of just come to life, and seeing it all start with Stitch, who on paper is just like this weird fucking dog superhuman thing, and then it's just one of the most adorable creatures on the face of the planet, who is then trying to understand humanity through the ugly duckling. It's so good. This movie is just I fuck you, Kaiser. You're not welcome here. Get out. This movie is just fantastic, and I have so much fun with it. And it's one of the it's one of those green flag films where if someone doesn't like it, I cannot trust them because there's so much just loved here.
Is that Kaiser?
Yeah, it's Kaiser.
Hello, Kaiser. You're welcome here. You're welcome in this space. Yeah, Lilo and Stitch. I'm glad you have this because, little known fact, in the spring top 100, Cody Newberry made several edits to his list up until game time. And at one point, he had Lilo and Stitch on his list at like 90 something. And I watched it, and then I got another revision list, and Lilo and Stitch wasn't there. So at least I watch it for something now because I'd seen it before, but I hadn't seen it for like ever. Movie is fine. It's there. It's. I'm not gonna say anything bad about it. It's a fun little movie, but you put this in lineup with 10 other Disney animated movies. I'm not going to recognize it. I do not understand the love that this movie gets. I'm too old to have nostalgia for it, but still, again, not saying anything terrible about it. It's a fun Disney romp, but you go to Disney parks and they try to sell Stitch as like a core Disney character. It's like Minnie, Mickey, Goofy, Donald, Pluto, and Stitch. What is Stitch doing there? Get him out of there. But yeah, I just don't. Again, this movie just suffers from the hype because I don't think it's a bad movie, but I cannot get behind the hype train on this at all.
There's only one mistake that Disney has made with the marketing, and it's replacing the alien ride at Walt Disney World with the Stitch breakout thing, which is awful.
Yeah, that's bad.
You said it. I was going to say that.
Everybody else on Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, that ride scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. The alien invasion ride. I still have like nightmares about it sometimes. Yeah, I think this is the best like post-Renaissance of the Disney movies. I love this movie. I think it's so charming. I love all the characters. It's so charming. I put Ponyo on my list, and I was like, should I put Lilo and Stitch next to Ponyo? Because these two are like kind of sibling movies to me. Yeah. Fucking love this movie. Why did they replace the washing machine? My wife and I guessed that it was because someone got harmed. A kid got harmed in a washing machine or something.
Kids just crawl into them. They're like, we can't advise any harm to children. So we'll replace it with whatever the fuck she does instead.
I surprisingly avoided the hell out of this movie for some reason and never got back around to watching it. I don't know why, but I never wanted to see it.
I saw it once as a kid. I haven't revisited it since. People seem to love it, though. I'm sure it's great.
And to be fair, I had your list in front of me. I did not get the hint. So that was a rough one this week.
I try to be vague to keep everyone on their toes.
I did a good job this time. What is our number 34, Allie?
Hope You Like Crying. Short term 12. If y'all have seen this and you haven't cried, go to therapy. You'll cry there. This is a great movie. This is just one of the. This to me is shout out to Jack Pinchuk, who might be watching here, might be watching on the replay, whatever. How he loves to just rewatch Requiem for a Dream and just feel like dog shit, but still want to revisit it. That's how I am with this movie, where it just reaches in my soul, rips everything out, puts me on the fucking floor. And it's still, I want to go back to revisit it because I just love the character so much. Seeing just this, I won't say like a shitty situation, but just a bunch of kids who just got like the short end of the stick and having to go through either the foster program or what's seen in this film, and it's not always the most supportive environment, and them carrying that trauma with them. And then when they're finally in a place where they feel like where people there genuinely support them and help them, they're running away or avoiding it or knowing that they're going to walk out to do an even worse life afterwards. And all of that just fear just like plagues this film. And like you have Brie Larson and John Gallagher Jr. sort of like leading this film. The real stars are like the kids of the film, namely Lakeith Stanfield and Caitlin Dever, who are giving some of the best like kid performances ever, two of the best monologues ever put to film. This is, and again, like as you get to the end of the film, and it's not a perfect wrap everything up ending. It's still like a lot of people just going through shit, but it's still so incredibly cathartic to see them work through everything that's going on in their life. And then you want to put it right back on and just be like, I want to be with these characters some more, and I wish I could see them sort of like live on and thrive in their life. It's beautiful. And this is just a perfect movie.
Yeah, no one else had this, right? All right. I'd wanted to see this for a while. I heard everybody talk about it and just all the names in it, early on in their careers. Really wanted to check it out. Never did. And I finally got around to it past couple weeks for the show. And I really liked it. This is really just my kind of movie. I just love it. I don't know if you call this a slice of life movie, but it's so real. Where it's these movies can go there. Like, I don't think it's like a real feel bad movie like you're selling it. I mean, there are things to feel bad about, but it's not
just
like
really depressing.
It's not. There's depressing moments, but it's not like a Requiem for a Dream type movie where it's just destroying your soul while you're watching it. I think there's enough uplifting stuff in it, but at the same time, like the characters are real. Nothing's played strictly for jokes. Even the humor is very real and organic. The characters are all real. The cast is great. Lakeith Stanfield especially is just amazing in this. When the part where he sings that song is that's heartbreaking. That is devastating. That is so real, and you get so much out of who that character is and what that character's been through that song. And I read up, they said the director wrote like the framework for the song, and they let Lakeith basically make it his own. So there's a lot of like personal stuff about his life in that music too, which makes it so much stronger. But yeah, he's so good. But everybody's so good. It's like I said, it's just I felt like I'm really watching these characters for the good and the bad. Like this, you laugh at stuff, you get upset about stuff, but it's just great. And then like just ends. It's like, okay, it's going to go on, and this is. But you learn through it like the good they're doing, and there is some hope in that, and how they can affect these kids' lives. And I like how they break it between the staff and the kids, and you get to see both their perspectives. Yeah, this is a really good movie. Everybody else on Short Term 12.
Go watch Atlanta.
Spence is really working on like my 110 through 120 on my list tonight because this was really close. Amazing movie. Even though it gave the world Rami Malek, I guess it balances out because it did give the world Lakeith Stanfield and Caitlin Dever. But
who are you dissing there?
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely dissing Rami Malek. Very, very raw movie in ways that you don't expect. Again, we're talking Oscar snubs also tonight, I guess. But Brie Larson, what happened there? Why did she not get an Oscar nomination? But yeah, I don't have too much else to say, I guess. Again, just super raw, honest movie. Another one of those sort of like, here's a perspective on people. We're going to open up a window on like this group of people that don't often get represented in film. And I always love when movies do that. So yeah, it's a wonderful movie.
Yeah, I really like this movie too. I think the thing maybe holding it back a little bit for me, as much as I do love this movie, is that it's a little too nice and warm sometimes, in like it's a little too like perfect, and in a way that I can imagine a messier version of this movie maybe being even better.
All right. That takes us over to Amaru and your number 37.
We're taking a complete left turn down a whole different road. 37, Die Hard. All right. I mean, this movie has been talked about forever because it's fucking amazing. I really don't need to say much. It's Die Hard. It's one of the best action movies there is, period. Even though I have a good amount of action movies there later. I guess the one reason it's so low on my list is because I came to it late. It came out the year I was born. So love it. That's really all I got to say about it. It's been talked to death. I love this film.
Yeah, you're right. There isn't much to say about it that hasn't already been said, but I mean, for a good reason. Like, this is just, I mean, it's Bruce Willis at his peak. When we talk about him now, but I mean, he was just firing all cylinders here. John McClane is just one of the all-time great action heroes. And this movie does what the sequels that started to do wrong, where they made him like this big-time action hero. And I just love it that he's just a regular cop who gets caught up in this situation, doesn't know how to handle it, just completely flying by the seat of his pants. Hans Gruber, one of the all-time great action villains, hamming it up just the perfect amount. Just the story and how it plays out, just going through the building and the scheme. Yeah, it's fantastic. Nothing to say bad about this movie. This is, I don't know if it's made it on my last top 100. I know it's floated on and off. Like, it's always like in the 90s, 100s, or maybe like 110s. But it's definitely worthy of being in the top 100. Very solid movie.
I won't start the argument, but I have my place in that argument.
Well, Jake
be smart about this, guys.
Jake is going for the win tonight because he said Die Hard's not a Christmas movie. He's really going hard for the win tonight. Yeah, how Kirk feels, but
I was trolling. I think it's the dumbest argument.
Well, you trolled on the right side.
I don't care about that.
Die Hard is a very good movie, a great action movie. Inspired movies that I've had on my list. I mean, like I had Speed a couple episodes ago. Is basically Die Hard on a bus. It revolutionized action movies. I don't know, if you twisted my arm, I might like the third one a little bit more, just because I like that like treasure hunt aspect of like we're driving all over the city to like get to the next clue, and also Sam Jackson. I mean, come on. But I mean, it's an action classic. It's almost perfect for what it is. So I love the movie.
I really like Die Hard too, but can I make fun of the fact that like one of the emotional arcs of the movie is like this cop like shot a teenager, and the whole like his emotional arc is like he pulls out his gun and shoots another person, and this time he gets it right, and you're supposed to be like, yeah, like
don't talk about Mr. Winslow like that.
And also the third movie, which I also love, I think it's probably I like it a little better than the first movie. It's another John McTiernan one. One of the arcs in that is that Samuel L. Jackson is actually racist against this white cop. That is like, he needs to come to terms with it's not all cops. That's like the arc of that movie. It's just funny that he's got these two fairly conservative messages slipped into these movies. Odd.
This is a near perfect movie. Jake's big flaw is my one flaw. Other than that, no changes. Fucking one of the most rewatchable movies ever. Great. Fucking great.
All right. That was easy. Rude. Number 36.
36 is, to me, I think, one of Will Smith's best movies. Action movies. Because he has a lot better ones. Enemy of the State. This is a badass action thriller film with a stacked cast of character actors. So not only do you have Will Smith and Gene Hackman and Jon Voight and Regina King, but then you got Jack Black and Jamie Kennedy and Barry Pepper and Jake Busey, and they're all just perfect in their roles, big and small. Tom Sizemore. This is just an absolutely thrilling action film. Lisa Bonet, Gabriel Byrne comes in there for a little bit. Gene Hackman and Will Smith. Will Smith does well with old grumpy white men. He just does well, whether it's a comedy or it's not a comedy. They just work well together. Freaking Jason Lee, you forget how many people are in this film. And from beginning to end, it has one of my favorite comedic lines. No, I just like going cross-dressing on the weekends. It's the perfect amount of Will Smith comedy to not make it like enough. You had to throw in a one-liner in there. No, it fit in that interrogation scene. And it's Will Smith actually showing dramatic chops in not such a dramatic movie, but he's starting to show it, and you see that he's an actual actor. Of course, you've also seen that in 6 Degrees Separation, but still, he can do the blockbuster films that also has the drama and combines bits of comedy in there. I love this film. It is top tier TNT film. Top tier.
Yeah, this movie's pretty good. Again, top 100. We'll take that out of the equation because that's a little high, but especially top 35. Yikes! But it's a fun movie. It's a good action movie, good action thriller. I'm hit or miss on Will Smith, but I think I think it's a good role for him. Hackman is great. Hackman does that like crazy old conspiracy theorist guy so well. And yeah, the whole cast is really good. Just like the whole, Voight is the bad guy, and them trying to track them down. It has that great like cat and mouse game. So yeah, I only saw this for the first time, I think, the past year or two. But I still think it's a pretty solid movie. Everybody else saw Enemy of the State.
Is this technically supposed to be a sequel to The Conversation? Is this the one?
It's a spiritual sequel to The Conversation, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I barely remember this movie, but I remember hearing that and thinking, I should check that out again since I've watched the Conversation in the meantime.
First of all, Enemy of the State is a Christmas movie. I just want to go on record saying that because it is. It is. But it's a really fun movie. Yeah, this is high on my favorite Tony Scott movies. Yeah, the plot and everything is really interesting and how it explores government surveillance and all that back then. I think my favorite scene is the scene though where Will Smith goes to Victoria's Secret to shop for Regina King, his wife, and he just like has no idea what he's doing, and it's hilarious.
I thought we were arguing about Die Hard because I've never seen this, but I know a fun fact where like most of the big actors in the movie are uncredited for some fucking reason, and that's literally all I know about this.
Jack Black is in there. I don't know if you said him, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Amaru, what is your number 35?
I really like action films. I really like fun action films, and this one is probably the most surprising one for me. Surprises I've had in this century. It's Live, Die, Repeat, also known as Edge of Tomorrow. I had to rewatch it yesterday because I hadn't seen it in a while, and I needed to like remind myself how really great this film is. Even more so because a lot of people didn't see it, or at least it didn't make enough money in the box office. I didn't see it, and when I started seeing it, I was like, all right, this is gonna be your natural action film. Bill Paxton's hamming it up. That's great. And then it actually gets into the time loop stuff, and it does something like it actually keeps the time loop fresh. And the reason why that happens is because they actually pay more attention to the relationship between Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise more than anything. And you start seeing seeing the same person that you start to care about die over and over and over again. They, as crisply paced as this movie is through the time loop scenes, they actually start to show the wear and tear of having to go through this again and again and again and again. Really, really hurts like your soul. And when you start like he starts really falling for the Angel of Verdun. Brendan Gleeson is great with his cameo role in it. I'll say it again. Bill Paxton just knows how to ham the fuck out of things, and I love him in this film. The J Squad is a bunch of just like random actors that you don't know who they are, but they fit well. Even the over the top ones, because the movie starts off a bit over the top. The design of the mimics are great, and just kind of where the entire plot unfolds. It's a hell of a fun time, and it's surprisingly really heartfelt when it comes to that relationship. And I enjoyed the shit out of this movie.
Who else had this?
No,
Just me.
Is Jake frozen?
Nope.
You had this week, didn't you, Jake?
No.
They had Minority
You're
Report.
thinking Minority Report.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Yeah.
I thought somebody had it. Okay. Edge of Tomorrow is I mean, it takes that Groundhog Day thing, and I think that trope really lends itself well to action movies, because you see, like it's about like learning and advancing forward. Like my favorite part of the movie is just like that sequence where he first, like the first time he lands the battle, he dies instantly, and then he lasts so longer just by paying attention. And I think that is a really good use of that of the Groundhog Day scenario, and just him training, getting better, and that scene where she's like I forget exactly what happens, but like they kind of like blow their day, like they ruins it. She's like, okay, whatever. She just shoots them to like start over.
He starts training, so every time he sucks at training when he's about to get injured, she just shoots him in the head.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good use of it. It's fun. I think Cruz and Emily Blunt are both really strong in it, and yeah, I mean, again, it's not a movie I'd put in top 100, but top 100 action movies, maybe. I think it takes a used idea and brings some fresh perspective to it. Oh, I know somebody better have Groundhog Day on the list. We had Groundhog. We had this, and we had Happy Death Day. Somebody better have Groundhog Day on the list before this is all said and done. Everybody else on Edge of Tomorrow.
Fun fact: I've never seen this all the way through. I watch it in like half-hour chunks on TNT or whatever, and I never get to the end. So,
oof. This movie's excellent, and this movie is why I will never write off a movie after the trailers, because the trailer for this movie was terrible. It was one of the most boring trailers. I was like, this just looks like a god-awful movie with just a bunch of robots punching each other in like gray environments. It looked like Terminator Salvation again, basically, in the trailers, which is one of the worst movies ever. But
number 12.
It turned out to be super fun. Again, the time loop thing, they keep it fresh. Like Happy Death Day, which we talked about, they find like the humor in it. Like when he like rolls over and the tank runs over him and everything. Like they find funny moments in the movie, like, which is good, is smart, because like the concept of this is like there's a lot of inherent humor that you can get out of it. So and I'm always a fan of Tom Cruise action movie. So I like it a lot.
Yeah, I love this movie too. I love like bumbling Tom Cruise and like badass like boss bitch Emily Blunt. Fucking like their romances, or whatever you want to call it, their relationship, I guess, is excellent. And I think all of the best Tom Cruise movies are kind of deconstructions of his persona. And this one is really interesting because it starts off with Tom Cruise as this incapable, regular grunt soldier. And he actually has to build himself up to become Tom Cruise in this movie, which I think is really fun, really interesting about it.
They actually originally take him down from being the media relations guy who's going, the haughty media relations guy that's going and avoiding war, and then put him down into the grunt and then build him back up.
Yeah. He definitely starts out as like the stereotypical Tom Cruise character, and then, like you said, Jake flips it. Kathy, I don't think you've seen this. I don't think you've seen this one. I watched. I don't think you were there. All right. So that takes us. That was your 35. Rue, what's your 34?
Scott and Jake, you said you think you like it better. I do. My 34 is Die Hard with a Vengeance.
There we go.
So the main reason Die Hard with a Vengeance is above Die Hard for me is because Die Hard with a Vengeance is the first Die Hard movie I ever saw. I saw it and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the character of John McClane, Samuel L. Jackson, and Scott hit it on the head. I love riddles and a treasure hunt. And at that age, me at that age, just seeing an action movie with Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis going to solve riddles, I was glued in front of the TV. Absolutely love that. And then also, Jeremy Irons is either as good or arguably to some better than Alan Rickman, which is harder to do. I still prefer Alan Rickman. Jeremy Irons being his little brother is badass as well. Again, I was 7. Yes, perfect movie for 7-year-old me. Especially being in love with Samuel L. Jackson. And then I now know for the rest of my life, and I'm hoping I get the number right, the 20th president of the United States was Chester A. Arthur. I will never forget that fun fact ever because of this film. It's great. The back and forth between Willis and Samuel L. Jackson just continues to be great from Pulp Fiction. I love this film to death, and it's my favorite of the series because it's the one that introduced me to Bruce Willis in this, and I absolutely love it. He's still a everyday cop, and he hasn't gone into the full-blown action hero yet. So John McClane as just the regular guy going through another fucked up day, like, damn. Love this film.
Yeah, I think this movie did the smartest thing possible, which is get away from the Die Hard formula. If they just kept up with that, I think that would have buried the franchise even earlier than it ended up getting buried. I think it was so great to just try and do something fresh. And if I remember correctly, I don't even think this was originally a Die Hard script. I think they just took an existing script and rewrote it to make it Die Hard, put John McClane and everything in it. And I think I was right with it. You brought McTiernan back. You kind of revert McClane back to that kind of sad sack character that he was in the first movie. So character-wise, you're getting back to what works, but you're also doing something very fresh with it. And yeah, just using New York as like kind of like the playground for everything to happen is a lot of fun. Them just getting from point A to point B and figuring all that out is really cool. Like creates a lot of great tension, a lot of great action. Sam Jackson's great in it, and him and Bruce Willis are I think did this come out before Pulp Fiction? Is this our first movie together?
No,
I meant it was the same
this
year.
was 94.
That's right. Yeah, 94. Okay, yeah, whatever. But yeah, so they were just the two of them playing off each other is so good. Just them, learning to have to work together and all the shouting they do and everything is just two really. Jackson's character is such another great thing to inject into this franchise, which I think it was missing, like just that making it that like buddy cop kind of story, which you have elements of in the first two, but this really solidifies that. And yeah, I don't like it as much as the first. I still, the first one's still very high up, for me. But this is right there, definitely. I mean, compared to the rest of the franchise, forget about it. The other sequels don't even hold a candle to this one. We talked about it a little bit already, but everybody else on Die Hard with Vengeance.
Never seen it.
Yeah, I already said why I liked it. However, fun story. I was kind of like, my parents sheltered me when it came to movies. When I was younger, I didn't get to see R-rated movies for a long time. When I was in 8th grade, we went on a trip to Chicago with my high school, and I, stayed in a room with some other dudes, and one of them had brought Die Hard with a Vengeance, and we watched it, and it was the first R-rated movie I ever watched. And there's a lot of cursing in it, so it really opened up a new world to me watching this movie. So it will always hold a special place in my heart for that reason, and it's also a really fun movie.
Scott, let me introduce you to Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson.
I know. It was quite an introduction.
Yeah. I first saw this movie on TV a bunch of times, so I never got why everyone was so mad at him when he's walking through Harlem. There's a TV edited version.
Oh my gosh. Oh man.
I was just like, I guess people are just angry there. I don't know.
All right. That was your 34. So we're going to go back to Jake with number 37.
Number 37, someone had the first movie of this, and you said, oh, well, it's not the best of these movies. And I was thinking, I hope you're thinking of Toy Story 2. even though you're probably thinking of Toy Story.
Yikes to a future episode.
Okay, cool,
Correct.
great. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Next on my list is at number 36 is Pulse, the Kiyoshi Kurosawa movie, and it's actually from the year 2000, not 2006. Yeah. This is a it got remade, I guess, in 2006 when they were remaking J-horror movies. But it's actually probably not probably not his most accessible, which I would say was Cure, came out 3 years earlier, his other masterpiece. And this is a movie where ghosts are taking people's souls through the internet, basically. It's a Japanese movie. And the thing that I think is this movie achieves so well is that it's about cyberspace, the internet invading our physical space. And you really see that in every horror sequence. You see these glowing, flickering screens or these computer screens that we all have that we're all looking into. And these urban apartments are disturbingly empty and eerie and unkept, and it's almost like the victims are being absorbed into this world so much that their apartments fall in disrepair. And yeah, it's just a whole vibe of a movie, and it's actually has a really confusing ending that it almost turns less like the Ring or The Grudge and more almost Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which I think is really interesting. And yeah, on a basic level, this movie is saying that hey, this thing that was supposed to connect us is leaving us less connected. But the movie, I think, has a lot of deeper thoughts and more interesting ideas on why that might be, especially for the year 2000.
All right. I did not get a chance to watch this movie, but I definitely want to see it. You kind of sold me on it and the idea. So just looking at some stuff, but I really dig what the aesthetic looks like. So I think this movie is probably going to be right up my alley. Just didn't get a chance to watch it yet. Has anybody else seen Pulse?
I've not seen Pulse. However, I did watch Cure last week for the first time, and I loved it. So I really want to watch this movie now because it seems like he might be my type of filmmaker, Kurosawa.
Hell yeah.
Haven't seen it, but it sounds interesting as hell.
Yeah, it really does.
Alrighty.
I don't think Spence has seen it.
Spence is gone, but I don't think I'll bet Spence has not seen it. If they have, we'll let them talk about it later.
No, I definitely haven't seen this.
All right. Okay. So, Jake, what is your number 35?
At number 35, I have one that Kirk doesn't like for some reason that already got yikes. It's Dunkirk.
I had it.
Okay, I remember someone called this the editing in this movie, because I was saying that the long shot on 1917 was a bit gimmicky, and someone was saying that Dunkirk, the editing is gimmicky in that, and I think it's just the opposite. I think that often a lot of the cross-cutting and editing that Nolan does is more gimmicky, especially when it's so woven into the premise, like in something like Inception, where the whole point is that he's cross-cutting between these different times. In Dunkirk, I think it's serving a utility, which is to make the most visceral experience and create the most momentum that he possibly can for the audience. And I think a lot of people were actually disappointed when these timelines crossed over and there wasn't some explosive moment in the movie, because I really think that, well, okay, let me there's a Quentin Tarantino quote about this where he's talking about how Nolan's contribution to cinema was cross-cutting and editing, if you were to distill it down to one element, and that this is him basically turning the storming the beach in Normandy scene in Saving Private Ryan into like a entire movie that you just sit there and there's none of the boring parts. And that's basically what I love so much about this movie.
I also had this. Yeah, this is like one of the most immersive war movies ever. David Sims described it as like this is like a novel with all the verbs taken out, I think is how he said it, which is a really cool way to describe it. Or with nothing but the verbs, maybe is what he meant to say, or what he said. But
That's great.
But yeah, it's a great way of describing it. The movie, like, and I don't understand the other criticism too. And I said the same thing about 1917, like, where I don't understand the criticism that you don't care about the people. Like, I definitely think there are, especially like what's going on in the boat with like Mark Rylance and Cillian Murphy and all that. I think some of that is, emotionally captivating. And this movie just has like some of the most spine tingling moments, like when all the ships come sailing in, like Kenneth Branagh has that moment, like the score is like, getting really intense and you think that, a battle's about to break out. And then he just has that moment. It's like, what do you see? And he looks out and he goes home. And then the music just swells and you see all of the boats come in. And that's just like an awesome moment. And then the ending, I don't know how you aren't moved by the ending on the train with the guy it's one of those like movie clips on YouTube where I just like go back and watch it all the time. Just the last 5 minutes of Dunkirk, like with the soldier on the train reading Churchill's speech out of the paper. And it's like, again, cross-cutting like between all the different people. And it just ends there with Tom Hardy on the beach and that amazing shot of the plane burning and like the soldiers coming up over the hill to take him. It's just it's a amazing technical exercise. I do think it is emotionally captivating and a really cool story about like how failure can even be a victory, how there can be victory in failure, because like, the whole thing is like the British are retreating and they have to get all these people out of there. And the way that the country comes together to help them escape the battle that they are losing is an interesting way to frame a war movie, and inspirational in its own way. So this movie's amazing.
Yeah, I've said it before. I said this movie is Christopher Nolan masturbating behind an IMAX camera for 2 hours, however long it is. You say people don't care about the characters. I think it's because Nolan doesn't care about the characters, and he doesn't care about the story. He doesn't care about it. It's look at this beautiful thing that I've created. My biggest problem with Nolan is, I think, especially later in his career, he is just one of the most self-indulgent and self-centered filmmakers out there. Like, the movies aren't for us, like they're for him, and like for us to look at and admire him. And I think that's what this movie is. We were comparing this to 1917. I think 1917, the way that movie is shot and cut, it tethers you to those characters and it makes it a real experience. This one, everything just feels so detached. And you're talking about that final scene, Scott. I won't lie, like I don't remember much, because by the third act, I was looking at my phone through a lot of it because I was so bored with this movie. I just got so bored of scenes of shots of sky and water, and maybe I need to see it on IMAX because it's an IMAX movie. But watching on my TV was not a very fun experience. Spence and Rue, your take on Dunkirk?
I want to make Scott and Jay real mad real quick. This is maybe Nolan's most forgettable film, which is rough. But beyond that, you know what I remember more than this? The one take of the Dunkirk battle in Darkest Hour. That's how much Nolan failed in this movie, that a single scene from a honestly vastly inferior film is more memorable and entertaining and well put together than this. I could not give a fuck about.
No, that does not deserve that video.
I'll do you. I'll do you one better. The Dunkirk scene in Atonement is better than anything.
Now you're speaking my language, but
Cody just filled the cup. Oh, yeah, this is like bottom 3 Nolan for me. I really don't give a fuck about it.
Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors out there. And I like this movie. It's not one of my favorite Nolan films, but I like this movie. Very similar to 1917. I don't get why people don't connect with the characters. And I really like the fact that I connect with them without knowing their name. It like shows me war is a bitch. There's so many nameless people you have no idea about that have gone through this really visceral, just harrowing event, and you still care about them and you just care about these people here and there that you don't remember what their names are, but you remember what they went through. And that's what kind of Dunkirk did for me. Especially you said it, Scott, the Mark Rylance part in the boat. I think this film is pretty great. It is for me on the lower half of Nolan's films, but I really, really like to love Nolan's films. So I'm with these two on this. Dunkirk is a great movie.
All right. So Jake, give us your 34.
My 34 is The New World. The New World is my favorite Malick movie. I think that I want to avoid when you think of Terrence Malick and you want to compliment Terrence Malick movies, I feel like the word like, oh, it's like poetry comes up like constantly and you want to avoid it almost, but like I think there's a reason. I think everyone independently who loves Terrence Malick movies, it is the proper description of his visual style. I compared him to I'd compare him to like it's like someone explained to him what a movie was. It's like, oh, you use images and sound and you tell a story and you evoke emotions, and it's almost like he never saw another movie. He just like, oh, okay, I get it. You put images together and I guess there can be a story, and yeah. So the thing I love so much about this movie is that it's such an incredible work of empathy. It's really the Pocahontas story, if you've seen that, told more probably through the eyes of Pocahontas herself in this version. I watched it recently. I think it's all like aged really well with like a very like appropriate casting. I saw someone on Letterboxd, I want to say, said that when the aliens come, they're going to save Terrence Malick, and I think that says a lot about what this movie is. It views the European settlers as these aliens that are invading this world, and how there's beauty and also tons and tons of pain in that as well.
Okay, I had never seen this movie. I watched it this week for the show. And I'm going to give this the Andrew James Barr treatment. I respect this movie more than I like it. It looks great. It's really well directed. I like how it has like that, the way the scenes are cut and interspersed. Kind of has like a dreamlike quality, or like you're watching a memory. Like nothing's really there. Chronologically, it's not solid. It's kind of all over the place. And I appreciate that. Some of the drawn out shots, like a lot of my complaints about Dunkirk could maybe apply to this, because at points it does seem to get a little bit self-indulgent, but still you're connected to these characters in a certain way. I didn't love it, but I understand if you do. Like I understand the appeal to it and why you would like it. I didn't think it was bad by any stretch of measure. I think there's a lot here to like. But it just I didn't connect it to the same level as you or a lot of other people did. But I totally get it. Does anybody else see The New World?
So I've not. Malick is a filmmaker I haven't ever gotten into, but I think it's just because I haven't watched the right ones for my taste yet, and I think this would be one of the right ones. So I am looking forward to watching it. I know that Paul really likes it, and we tend to have very similar tastes, so that might mean that I will like it a lot too.
Scott's a big song-to-song fan.
No, that is one of the ones I've seen, and it is not good.
I've never seen a Malick film, so.
I haven't seen it.
All right. That means it's time for the carousel portion of the show. Scott, we're going to start with your 33.
All right, Koho, this one's for you, buddy. We've had some disagreement tonight, Kirk, but if you don't like this movie, then clearly you've never been to Singapore. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black.
Yeah!
This motherfucker don't miss.
No.
Nobody had it. Wow, okay. My favorite Disney movie. I love this movie. And we will probably never see Disney make a movie like this again, because they have just become so calculated and like strangle their artists, it seems like, basically. And this movie is like they just let Gore Verbinski do whatever he wanted, right? Like he just made a Gore Verbinski movie. And that's what makes it so great is it's just this weird CGI heavy movie about, like very plot heavy, like 2.5 hours long, like no reason for it to have as much plot as it does. Based on a theme park ride, you have Johnny Depp stumbling around doing some weird Keith Richards imitation, and like in doing so, creating like just this iconic character. I mean, Jack Sparrow's entrance, probably the greatest introduction of any character in a movie. Like when he comes in on the ship as it's sinking and just steps on the dock like that. I mean, it is perfection. And the CGI, like in this movie and Dead Man's Chest, like is still some of the best CGI like ever. Like it holds up incredibly well, especially the Dead Man's Chest CGI. But such a fun movie. A lot of humor in it that I think really works. This was, again, this was kind of, we were discovering Johnny Depp in this character, and it was so weird and interesting, and we'd never seen it before. He eventually wears out his welcome in the series with the same shtick, but certainly not here. All the supporting characters are really fun. Again, like I love the CGI. Like some of the images, like Barbossa's crew, like rowing on the boat, is like such a cool image. And just some of the other stuff in the movie, like the way that Barbossa's like face turns and stuff when he goes into the moonlight. And Jeffrey Rush is such a great mustache twirling villain. Like he just totally buys in to what the movie is doing. Like he's so on the level of this movie, and everyone is, I think. And that's what makes it so much fun. Like I said, it's a bygone era of Disney now. I watched this and I still have as much fun as I did the first time I watched it nowadays, but there's also a sadness in knowing who knows when we will see a live action movie like this from Disney again, because they tried to do something like this, I guess, with Jungle Cruise, and it just was not this.
Yeah, I love this movie, and it's not my favorite in the series. But if you say it is, like, I'm not going to argue with that at all because it's great. Like, there's something special about just when it's like a kind of like a more basic story before like the mythos explodes, and you just a lot more like confined and focused. So yeah, I think it's really solid. And yeah, it's lightning in a bottle. This movie should not have worked. Movie based on a theme park ride should not be good at all. And it worked, and it's crazy. Johnny Depp is great, and it's just that perfect like Disney mix of family friendly pirate action and magic, which is just such like core Disney, but done well, like real like heartfelt Disney, not like cash grab Disney. Disney in a positive way when you say Disney. But yeah, like the special effects when the reveal of the crew, when the moonlight first shines on them, you see what they are, and the monkey and everything. So good. Barbossa is so good. Yeah, Jeffrey Rush knows exactly what movie he's in, and he plays that character so well. And just like all the stuff, the sword fights and the ship chases and everything. It's just such a great, like, it's not only a bygone era from now to then, but it's a bygone era from then to like adventure movies of like the 40s and 50s has like a lot of feel of that, a lot of influence like that. And so I mean, there's a lot of reasons we're not going to see movies like this again. But yeah, it's fantastic. Everybody else on Pirates.
Kirk, what's your favorite Pirates? Out of curiosity.
Dead Man's Chest.
Yeah, I'd say not the best Pirates film, but still really great. I don't know what complicated thoughts about this. Just like good movie, good pick. Wouldn't made my list, but respect it.
2 is the only other acceptable answer for your favorite.
Yes, World's End is great. Okay, you need to stop.
World's End is good.
It's
okay, but it's the first time you actually feel the 2.5 hours, and you feel it a lot. I revisited these films for the first time in a while this past year, and when the first Pirates came on, I was like, "This movie is 2.5 hours." I thought it was like 1:45. Because it is so good. Keith Richards' impression to becoming Keith Richards' son, which is a very amazing callback, by the way. And you talked about the special effects. I think the scene where Barbossa tells the crew to take a walk and they go in the ocean under the boat is the most iconic shot of the entire series. That shot and that scene is just so damn great. The movie, everybody in this film is amazing. Even my brother one day told me, like, if Orlando Bloom is not playing Legolas, he can't act. And I kind of looked back and I was like, ooh, shit, he's kind of right. And even in this, he's not bad. He's not bad.
He fits the character. Yeah.
He fits. So I love this film. This is a great pick here.
Oh yeah, this is one of Verbinski's wet movies. Yeah. So yeah, I also I just want to say that watching early Verbinski, he's always been obsessed with Rube Goldberg machines, like those little machines that one thing gets knocked over and a marble goes off or whatever. Even in like Mousetrap, where these two guys are just trying to catch a mouse, and the whole thing is about Rube Goldberg machines.
I thought you were talking about the game for a second. That was a tight ass game, Mousetrap. But anyway,
or it's Mouse Hunt is the name of his first movie. Sorry, yes, yeah. But Mouse Trap also has the Rube Goldberg machine in it. Yeah. So yeah, I just think it's really interesting because Johnny Depp is someone who's obsessed with Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. You see him do impressions of those actors all the time, and marrying the love of contraptions and the love of those old silent film stars is something that I don't hear people talk about a lot. Those two elements coming together, on top of also the Keith Richards impression, it's just a perfect diamond of a performance.
Yeah.
All right. Adelaide Spence, your number 33.
My 33 is maybe the best imperfect movie ever. It is Singing in the Rain. One of the best musicals of all time. One of the best movies of all time. No real complaints other than one shitty scene, but everyone acknowledges it. And beyond that, it's fucking perfect. It is endlessly rewatchable. Some pitch perfect performances. One of my favorite movie villains of all time, because let's face it, she's barely a villain, but she's also just like sort of shitty. So you're like, ooh, I hope you lose. And she fucking does. And it's super satisfying. All the songs are great. All but one of the dance numbers are great. And everyone talks about how great Donald O'Connor is. That is not a question. I feel like we forget a lot about just like Gene Kelly is the star of this film, and he is fucking incredible in this. Where it's just like I find myself slacking on some classic musicals, and I want to go back to it. And he's just someone who I'm always just like I'm excited to watch him act. He's one of the most entertaining presences ever put to film. He is just an incredible human being. Another green flag film. If you don't like this, something is wrong, because it's one of the most joyous, fun films to watch ever.
Well,
is it though?
Yes, it is, Kirk.
Yeah, I go back to this movie, and everybody talks about how great it is. I'm like, maybe it'll be better this time, and it never is. I just looked it up. This movie's under 2 hours, and I'm shocked by that because I feel like this is like one of those 2.5 hour musicals because it drags on, and it's just one of those movies that's like, you know what I like about this movie? I love like the story, the idea of transitioning to sound, and I love those scenes like where they're trying to figure out what to do with the microphone. Like that stuff's great. But the music, other than the title track, none of it really hits for me. I think it's long. I think it's drawn out. And I feel like that's what the movie is like, just a thinly veiled reason to like pile together all of these musical numbers that aren't that great. I've seen a lot better. Donald O'Connor, I mean, he's a clown, and I don't think clowns are that entertaining. He's a clown in this movie, I should say, not in real life. I don't know much about the guy in real life, but like in this movie, he's basically a clown doing pratfalls. Like, clown fell down. That's funny, I guess. Yeah, I want to like this movie just because it's supposed to be great. Everybody tells me how great it is. Every time I watch it, I'm like, I don't know what movie you guys are watching because this is kind of boring and kind of not fun. Nobody else had on their list?
Man, but Marx Brothers, so funny, am I right?
Absolutely.
Love when they hit a door or they have a mustache.
Anyway, I think you described it pretty well, Spence, actually, of like, even though the Broadway melody sequence, like the movie does like grind to a halt, in a way when that happens. You don't even care because the rest of the movie is like such a joy to watch. And yeah, I think that is the whole point of the make 'em laugh number, is that he's doing like the stock jokes of like the pratfalls and the stuff like, I mean, like, I think that's the whole point of that particular number. I don't know that it's meant to be like laugh out loud funny. It's just like a satire almost in a way of all that. But yeah, brilliant movie.
Something about musicals and specifically this one, especially this one, is that it gives me a weird like hope in humanity that like people want to come together to make this dumb thing where we're all singing and dancing and all choreographed and it's beautiful and it's a great movie. I don't know. The movie makes me happy.
I've heard the song a bunch. Never seen it.
Robots.
Upgrades, people. Upgrades.
Amaru, what is your number 33?
My number 33 is what I consider to be Edgar Wright's best film. It's Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz is fucking hilarious. It is just a gem of a hilarious movie. It is so ridiculous and ridiculous to the best point possible. Also mixing in a good murder mystery film. I think this is where Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Edgar Wright hit the perfect. This is where they hit their stride. This is where they just knew exactly what they wanted to do with this film, and the way they stylize it is bloody brilliant. It is so funny, and it has one of the best action 30 minutes of action in almost any film, but especially in any action comedy. The entire Sanford goes out and just pulls out all the guns and all the everything to go after them. It's funny. And speaking of Point Break, you said Point Break. I was like, I'll bring that up a little later. Nick Frost is just such you love him because he's so innocent and so nice, and his father's such a dick. It's great acting, hilarious movie, and I love Hot Fuzz. It's my favorite of the Cornetto trilogy.
This would be my favorite great movie if Shaun of the Dead didn't exist. And two reasons. I think I love Simon Pegg, whatever he does, but I think he's at his best because he plays the perfect ne'er-do-well. And when he's playing a guy in this movie that just kind of has it all together and knows everything he wants to do and has a plan and is organized, like, to me, that's not like peak Simon Pegg. Still good, but just not peak. And also, I rewatched it this week and I realized I think I like Shaun of the Dead better because Shaun of the Dead is a tribute to movies I love, and Hot Fuzz is a tribute to movies I actively hate. So I think that affects it a lot too. But yeah, it's so fun. I don't think, and I also don't think the script is as tight as Shaun of the Dead, but it's still really tight. It's a really tight script. And all those side characters, I just love that idea of this perfect little town that keeps its murder rate down by just making all the murders look like accidents, and nobody's able to figure that out because they're all just kind of like bumpkins. And yeah, Timothy Dalton's really good. This is like the head villain. Like, he's just real swarmy, and just like that idea, it almost has like a Stephen King-ish feel of like small town horror, where like these like simple, small-minded people could be like so dangerous. So yeah, this movie it's a great pick. It's not on my top 100, but still a really solid pick. Everybody else on Hot Fuzz.
Well, if you had asked me a week ago how I felt about Edgar Wright, I would have said I like to really enjoy all of his movies. Then a thing happened, but I am in that camp of like I like all of his movies except for the latest one. I don't know that I love any of them. He's just not one of my guys, but I enjoy the movies. I understand what people get out of them. I enjoy Hot Fuzz. I think he is better in doing like these smaller, more contained movies. I think like when you give him a big sandbox to play in, he kind of can just go all over the place, as you know, is best evidenced in Last Night in Soho. But yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, so I think this is an ideal type of movie for him. Although ironically, I think my favorite of his movies is now the documentary he made this year, The Sparks Brothers, which is a ton of fun. But Hot Fuzz is good. It's solid.
Rue, of all the right films you could have picked, you went with this one.
Yes, I did.
Betrayed me. This is a great movie. I really love it. It's still my second favorite of the Cornetto trilogy. I think it's really fun, really fantastic. Any film that references Point Break is obviously already have like a high like increase of just greatness. I think my favorite part about the film is, strangely enough, like the final action set piece. Because I know it's not like that's not the point of the film, but I think they photograph it really well. And I think the choreography of it is like really engaging and clear and fun. But also might be my favorite Nick Frost in the whole trilogy, which I think says a lot.
Real quick public service announcement. Fuck Scott Pilgrim, the character.
Okay.
Character, yes.
I think. How could you be surprised that Rue chose Hot Fuzz when you've seen his list? Like, of course he loved Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
Like, it's made for him.
Jake,
true.
we saw Scott Pilgrim together, so I'm just going to shame him for not picking the bonding experience.
Fuck
Yeah. Okay.
Pilgrim. Pilgrim.
Oh, thank
You guys
you.
remember? You remember earlier I brought up like that like friend who his mom said sexy when he tried on a shirt at a birthday?
Why?
I remember.
Yes,
You remember? Okay. Well, he was like a good friend of mine when we watched all the Schwarzeneggers and stuff, and he taught me about Kurt Russell. I remember his mom and him were shocked when they didn't know who Kurt Russell was. I was just like a little kid. They're like, you don't know who Kurt Russell? Well, he was like we were probably both Nick Frost types as children in this movie, who saw like every Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, loved Jackie Chan, all that shit. So this one's my favorite as well for that reason.
All right, Jake, what is your number 33?
33, I picked Raging Bull. Okay, no yikes. Yeah, Raging Bull is probably, I think, Scorsese's angriest or meanest movie, perhaps. Like, it's definitely in a lower key, a lower register, more in line with Taxi Driver and some earlier Scorsese pre-Goodfellas. And yeah, I think that the thing that draws me so much to this character is that his pathology seems to be, it's so self-destructive that it's just like his problem is that he can't accept any sort of affection or meaningful relationship, and that's what's like wrong with him. And you never really know exactly why, but it's fascinating to watch. Yeah, that's I guess my thoughts on Raging Bull.
Yeah, this isn't my favorite out of like early Scorsese, but the more I've been rewatching, a few times lately, and it's still pretty solid. The character is just so like, it's just like a really good like despicable character, like where you can just watch it, be like, oh man, like you said, Scott or Jake, like he just can't get it right, like he can't figure life out, like he has these opportunities for life to be better, and he just can't take them. And that's like makes it just such a tragic character because of that. It's such a well shot movie. Some of the best boxing scenes ever, especially like the montage of all his matches, and then that last fight with Sugar Ray where it's just him getting brutalized. Just really well, just very artistic, but still it feels like boxing. And then like that interlude with like the color home videos is just like a really cool detour the movie makes. But yeah, just a lot of really cool, interesting choices by Scorsese. And you could tell he's just really fascinated by this character. I mean, I don't know if how much he sympathizes with him. But he's very fascinated with it. Really just gets into the psyche of him. So yeah, it's again, like I said, there are other early, 70s, early 80s Scorsese's I would pick, but this is still pretty good. Everybody else on Raging Bull.
I mean, this is just too dark and mean of a movie, like you said, Jake, for it to ever be one of my favorites. But technically speaking, it's an almost flawless movie. And yeah, I was going to highlight that the editing by Thelma Schoonmaker, especially in those fight sequences, is like breathtaking. Like maybe the best edited, sequences, best edited film ever. But it's just it doesn't sit right with you as well made as the film is. And you mentioned Taxi Driver too, and that's a film that I feel similarly about. So I prefer, I guess, the other era of Scorsese. I mean, I already had Goodfellas on my list, obviously.
This is actually my third favorite Scorsese film. I love this movie to pieces. It's one of my favorite biopics ever as well. I won't say it tends to get forgotten, but I feel like it's seen more as like a De Niro film than a Scorsese film. But I love I still love the Scorsese flourishes in the directing and even the storytelling, like the structure of it. I feel like I try to hype it up all the time when people talk about Scorsese because they prefer like his gangster flicks. Like, no, like this is smaller, but it's still perfection, and it's dour, and it's dark, and it just sucks you in so well.
Haven't gotten around to this one yet. I should, but I haven't.
All right. Scott, 32.
All right. Did anyone figure out my hint?
Yeah, is it the Lego movie?
It's the Craggle. It's the Lego movie. My favorite animated movie. I think this movie is just absolutely genius. First of all, it predicted Donald Trump becoming president because he's in the movie and his name is President Business. And just again, one of the many ingenious things I think about this movie, and it it's a very funny movie. I mean, it has that Lord and Miller style of humor, like that. They obviously also patented in the Jump Street movies around the same time, which are very, very funny. But this shows that they can make a family-friendly movie that is just as funny. Like, I know some people think that the humor is just like too fast and too breathless, but I love that kind of humor where it's just like so many jokes a minute, like you're not even going to catch everything until you go back and watch it again. Like, I like that because it makes a comedy rewatchable, whereas a lot of comedies, it's like once you've heard the jokes the first time, it's like, okay, great. I mean, it was funny, but it's not going to be the same on a rewatch. But you can get new stuff out of the Lego movie on a rewatch. The humor and also just the visuals in general, because the worlds that this movie create are so, again, meticulous, creative, just kind of breathtaking to look at, especially for somebody like me who did grow up playing with Legos, and just seeing the worlds and the way that they're designed. Again, there's all these little details in it that you feel like you're missing and that you want to go back and rewatch time and time again. Thematically, it's like that's the aspect I wasn't expecting of the movie to be so resonant. But the whole idea about how we kind of like ostracize creatives in a way, and people who have more unique like uh, perspectives on things. Like, again, they have this whole like frame narrative that they reveal with the child, the child in the real world, and Will Ferrell playing the dad, and the whole sort of point of the whole thing is like the kid wants to be creative and expressive and everything with the Lego designs that he's building, but the dad prefers like the rigid structure, and like he wants everything perfect. He doesn't want the children to touch anything. And the movie is about finding values in those little like spontaneous moments of creativity that we all sort of explore when we're younger, and that a lot of people explore through playing with Lego. So it's a really cool meta narrative in that way. And there's all like the weird characters and creatures, again, are just like a tribute to that creativity, like the Unikitty and the robot pirate, and all these again, weird characters, and the design of the double-decker couch is another aspect that sort of gets at that metaphor. You have Liam Neeson giving, I think, an absolutely hilarious dual vocal performance as good cop and bad cop. He's the highlight of the voice cast for me, but everyone's really great. It's like the one time when Chris Pratt's shtick works because it fits the character, and they're almost like poking fun at that sort of thing in the way that they do it. So the Lego movie is genius. Like, I rewatch this movie all the time. I don't feel that way about a ton of animated movies, as you can see, because I don't think I've had another one on my list. That's not true. I had Kiki's a long time ago, but amazing movie.
Yeah, this is another movie that shouldn't work. I remember seeing the ads for this, the trailers for this. I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be a commercial for Lego. And at this point, my son hadn't discovered Lego yet, and I was trying to keep that from happening for as long as possible because Legos are crazy expensive. So the longer he went without playing with them, the happier I was. And then I watched this movie, like, oh, this is like a real movie, and like it has like real characters, it has something to say, and it's funny. I think. For me, this movie loses luster. It's one of those ones because of the sequels. Like I wasn't a fan of the sequel. I wasn't a fan of Batman Lego. So the idea started to wear thin for me. But I go back to this, I'm like, oh, this is still a really solid movie. Again, I agree with Kathy. 32 is a little bonkers. 32 all time. But it's a fun movie. Everybody else will
have it higher.
He very likely, I don't remember, but he's very well.
Here's your issue, Scott. This isn't even the best Lego movie. Like, it's amazing. Absolutely.
It is, though.
No, it's not.
Lego Batman?
It's the only good
Lego Ninjago stand down here.
Well, children can be cruel. This is awesome, though. Like, this is a fantastic movie. I love it to pieces. It's like I do think like it as a critique of capitalism, whatever, is really fun, but also I think it builds like an interesting world. Again, like the idea of low expectations, but it's still like, oh hey, this basically appeals to like everyone's childhood, and the fact that it incorporates that plus like new things and everything just sort of comes together as one like cohesive whole is crazy how well it works, as well as it also worked really fucking well in the sequel. I think this is just like one of the weird. It's like an anomaly of a film, and I think the fact that it exists and is good is one thing. But it being this great, I understand why it's on your list.
I enjoyed this film. I have to go back to that other one more often because I have to. But I enjoyed it when I watched it. I haven't seen Lego Movie in a while, but it was cool. I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, this is like the only time that I think having like, oh, like look at all these IP characters. Like it's the only time it worked. I think is everyone.
The 2004 NBA All Stars. That's my favorite appearance.
Are we all sick of this trend though? At this point, did you guys see Free Guy where he like pulls out like a Hulk hand or something? And...
I love that film. That film was much better than it deserved to be. Free Guy was good.
But you enjoyed this moment in the movie?
Yes, very much so.
My eyes were in the back of my skull. I was irate. I don't know, but I really like it. The Lego Movie, I think, because they're irreverent about it.
All right, LA, that takes us to your 32.
Speaking of animated films, I've up next my favorite Pixar film, WALL-E. Hell yeah!
Unacceptable!
Go fuck yourself, you pink-haired bitch. This is fantastic. I'm gonna draw back to like an analogy I made last week of just like no one would care about the Liberty Bell if there wasn't a crack in it, and that's how I feel about this movie. Where I think that there's so much amazing stuff in this film. If it was just the first half of the film, it would just like I feel like the love for it wouldn't be there. But the fact that we get to go out and see all these things, like yeah, it's not perfect, but even in its imperfections, I can still fall in love with everything the film's doing. I think I think Jake says a lot of like the idea of like a movie is like weirdly optimistic or it like gives him hope in the universe, and I feel that here, where it's just like the fact that you can make a kids film about not only like the dangers like climate change and everything, like how pollution and everything is going to destroy the world, but how just a single human just looks up the history of Earth and falls in love with it and is literally willing to sacrifice everything he's ever known just to get back and recreate the wonders he found of the past is beautiful. And I love that. And that's even ignoring Wally and Eve, who are two of maybe like one of my favorite like couples in film period, because they barely share a word together and you still like you feel every like arc in their emotional journey and every step, even in like the like little fucking changes in Wally's eyes as you see him fall in love with her, and it's beautiful. And when they finally share that first kiss and he just like lets go and is sort of shocked by it. I was really depressed a couple weeks ago and I watched this and I'm just like, I remember why I love this film so much now. It just picks me up out of like my sadness consistently. And I get people's flaws in it. I think John Ratzenberger, like laying pipe in this film, is like the side character. Not great, but again, I still love all of it because like it's a movie for me.
All right. We're at 2.5 hours. I've talked about this movie a lot, so I'll keep it simple. First half, super boring. Second half, generic, slapstick, dumb cartoon, action. Top 3 most overrated Pixar. Everybody else saw on Wall-E.
This opinion,
cry.
Kirk, is bad. Terrible opinion.
Yeah.
Terrible opinion. No, Wall-E is a special. It is top 3 Pixar. It's maybe the best. It's special. It's weird. It's like it's their art film. It's the weird Pixar art movie. And that's the one that it's like if you were to try to explain what's special about Pixar compared to like I don't know, like DreamWorks or some shitty animation company, you'd be like, watch Wall-E and try and imagine any other studio making that. Yeah.
90% of the time, I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about.
Look,
DreamWorks just got bodied.
I am very surprised I don't have waste allocation, load lifter, earth class in my top 100. Because Wall-E is a beautiful, beautiful film. It is, I think, in my top 5 Pixar, or at least it goes in and out of it because somehow I left it off my top 100 when it really should be on there. You care about a robot and a cockroach walking for the first half of the film. The love story in this movie is beautiful and heartbreaking, and even the second half it does take a dip, but it going into whatever his name is, who plays the ship captain. I always forget that guy's name. Who does the voice acting? Trying to fight against Otto and have them do it. And you meet the other robots and Mo. It's just not John Ratzenberger because it's not Ratzenberger.
It's the uncle from Wizard of Waverly Place.
Jeff Garland.
Jeff Garland.
There you
Thank
go.
you, Jeff Garland. And then have freaking anytime I'm on top 100, my mind goes blank if it's not IG. Fred Willard. Fred Willard as an actual human being in it. It is artful and it is beautiful, and you care about things you didn't think you would care about. That's why you love Pixar. It is definitely a top 5 Pixar film. I love it.
One of the few Pixar films I've never seen.
Scott.
Yeah, I
You're
know.
studying so hard for Fandom, you should watch Wall-E.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Rue, what do you got? 32.
We're back to it now, Jake. It's Minority Report. I love this film. Apparently, Philip K. Dick just knows how to make original sci-fi things that are just fucking awesome. The just very iconic scenes and the sci-fi visual effects and tech in it with the spiders and freaking pre-crime. The whole moving the screen is just a lot of people just kind of try to mimic that after. I think Colin Farrell just is underrated in this film, and he gets screwed so fucking hard. You hate him, and then you're like, and then by the time he gets to where he is at the end of the movie, you're like, oh no! To be able to do a whole flip on him by the end of the film is great. I think Samantha Morton is really creepy and really good in this film. The precogs are kind of creepy. There's a lot of actual like low key but high key creepy things in this film, but works with the aesthetic because the entire movie is it's really gray and really dull, but it's supposed to be just because it's the feeling you want in this movie, especially how gray and dull and Tom Cruise really is throughout the film. He just puts on the whole, I'm going hard on this pre-crime. I'm definitely going through it until it's me, and just knowing that he's a drug addict and he lost his son and everything it's supposed to be. Even though it feels gray and dull, the action is amazing, and it's one of my favorite Neil McDonough films. I just think he also plays really well off him as well. I love Minority Report. I think it's one of my favorite Steven Spielberg films. It's really, really great.
I said this earlier today. I agree with you about the aesthetic of the movie. I think that the aesthetic of Saving Private Ryan kind of changed the way that all like war films, all films really, like most films and all war films looked going forward. And I think that Minority Report kind of had the same effect with like the hand thing and the dour atmosphere and all that stuff you're describing. So like I saw this in 2002, and like I knew who Steven Spielberg was at that point when I was a little kid. He was the only director I knew. I like cut out like clippings I found from Entertainment Weekly and taped them above my bed. So I was fucking hyped for Minority Report. And our town just got a multiplex. Instead, we used to have to go to the mall, and there was like 2 screens. So we got a multiplex, and I was so pumped for this fucking thing. You know when you're a kid and there's like sensory overload from going to the movie theater, like it's like almost being on a roller coaster. You know what I mean? Right. So like when this movie came out, the sound was calibrated. It felt like so loud, and I specifically remember Samantha Morton, one of the precogs. She like jumps out of the water and yells, "Run!" And my little brother just fucking booked it out of the theater, and my heart like dropped into my stomach. I was terrified. This is the most scared I've ever been in a movie ever, easily. I'm like still proud to this day that I even sat through that after that. So yeah, I love this movie.
You guys used a word a couple of times that I think applies really well to this movie: aesthetic. I love futuristic movies that create a very specific aesthetic and vision for the future, and I think this movie does it well. Like it has like all like the high tech stuff, but I just love little things like the fact that all the science and pseudoscience that goes in the pre-con, it all comes down to like a little wooden ball, and just little things like that, like tactile things like that, just make it feel so much more real. This isn't necessarily top tier Spielberg for me. I just think it's interesting because it's like a movie that should have been done by like Ridley Scott or Paul Verhoeven or somebody like that. But it's Spielberg, which just takes that idea and just, flips it a completely different way. I really enjoy it. It's just not as high as some of his other work for me. But it's a really fun sci-fi action thriller, which you don't really get a ton of quality in that subgenre. So I think this is really well done. Everybody else on Minority Report.
This is actually my second favorite Spielberg. Like I really love this film. I've been meaning to revisit it pretty recently, just because it's been a while. But I remember like nothing but positives about this. It's one of my favorite sci-fi stories ever, and that's ignoring just even like how it was changed and adaptation and everything. It's just fucking. It's great. One of the few times I think Tom Cruise is just like a good actor in a movie, not just like a good lead. Like he's he's awesome in this film.
You're killing me, Smalls. Yeah, no, Minority Report is super cool. It combines like Spielberg's populist sensibility with, again, like the mind expanding sci-fi weird stuff of Philip K. Dick in like a really smooth and effective way. Great concept, and Tom Cruise. I don't know what Spence is talking about. He's always great.
Can I just add in too that there's a valid read on the movie that Samantha Morton is like plotting her freedom. Like that's the whole actually what's going on in the movie. So if you watch it again, watch it with that in mind.
All right, Jake, you're 32.
At 32, I have Wolf of Wall Street. Oh, cool. Yeah. So my previous one was like I said Goodfellas, and this is like one of the Goodfellas type movies that he makes. Like Casino is also another one. It's like the rapid editing and the music video like style. And I could have picked the Goodfellas in this movie's place. I wouldn't want both of them on the list, but I chose the Wolf of Wall Street because I think that it deserves the spot just as much, even though it isn't as old, and probably some people are resistant to call it a classic because it hasn't been long enough. I think it's fairly obvious to me that it's going to be remembered as one of the great Martin Scorsese movies and a classic. He made this when he was in his 70s. Wolf one of my favorite scenes in the movie is where he is throwing money on a secretary and shaving her head as like a crowd like just like cheers it on in like Sodom and Gomorrah like excess, and you just see her laugh crying, like she's smiling and tears are dripping down her face, and like she's capturing all this at once, and it's just it's sickening. It's a sickening thing. And yeah, I think anyone that reads this movie as celebrating wealth and excess is making a bad faith argument, or that either that or they don't understand movies or something. I don't know.
Back-to-back Scorsese. I like that. Yeah, the idea that this was made by a 71-year-old man is insane, because this movie has such energy to it and such life. And yeah, I agree with you that I don't think this celebrates, but I think it's the same thing. I mean, this is another version of Scorsese's Crime Story, where it's not, he's not celebrating it. He's just kind of like giving you a peek into this world. And you're not meant to accept it, but he just lets you see it from their perspective, and you understand their feelings on it. And again, it doesn't say this is good and this is acceptable, but it says this is why these people are doing this. This is how they view the world. And it kind of gives you that like fly on the wall view of it. But yeah, the performances, and that's the way it's just it tells the story. It's so fast paced. It's so kinetic. The cast is fantastic top to bottom. Another movie, they only put John Bernthal in for 5 minutes, and it breaks my heart because I want to see that guy so much more. But yeah, I've talked about this one a lot too, so I won't say too much more. But yeah, this is a very strong pick. Everybody else on Wolf of Wall Street.
Even though this is the type of Scorsese movie that I like more, I like the movie, but it is at 3 hours. It is exhausting. I think that is my main critique of the movie. It's just a lot. It's a lot of excess, and it starts to wear on you. Whereas like Goodfellas and Casino are more solid at like 220 in terms of their running time. I just think there's again a lot going on here, but there's a lot of very good parts of the movie. Very funny, like it's a very funny movie. My friend and I used to do the money thing before we did our mock trial rounds in college. We would sit there at the table and go like they do in the movie, but and that was fun. So but yeah, I mean it is the parts are greater than the whole in this movie is what I would say.
Anybody else?
I agree with Jake. It's a great movie. It's a classic. Very good movie.
Yeah, this does not work whatsoever. I'm not the type that would argue that it celebrates Belfort at all. I think Scorsese just fails to put him down. I think the movie just doesn't sort of come together at all. I think it's a very just sort of messy, sloppy film that while it has a good energy to it, I think that its actual story and its structure just doesn't work. This goes in that pile with like basic white film bro dudes all love this film, and I will never understand it or get behind it.
We are
none
basic
of this works.
white film bro dudes.
I know
It's
that's why half my list is fucking queer, Jake. I'm offering a new perspective.
You had American Psycho.
Again, and that's the thing. I think it puts down the culture pretty well while other people disagree. And this is one of the films where like I could see that perspective, but it just doesn't work for me whatsoever. And I've given it tries and tried to just see the new perspective. It just it's never worked like that for me. And I don't know if it ever will.
I think that it's that you empathize so much with the characters who encounter Jordan Belfort rather than Jordan himself. If you view it through that perspective, you might.
I think the best scene that encapsulates that is the scene, and I forget exactly where it's at in the movie, but they're talking about the one guy that married the one girl in the office, and then he was like real like this just like throwaway line, like he killed himself. He slit his wrist 2 weeks later, or however he phrased it. But like just like the start is that you're like. That just like takes all because like up to that it's like big party suicide, and you're like, oh, and it just kind of like it's like a punch to the gut, you know. So I think that's really what like encapsulate that's for that. All right, moving on from that, we're gonna get to everybody's number one for the week. Scott, what is your 31?
My 31, Bong Joon-ho's masterpiece, Memories of Murder. Another one of those true crime procedurals that I am, putty in the hands of, I guess I would say. Yeah, but it has like it's such a uniquely Bong Joon-ho movie. Like it just has that incredible meshing of genres that he is able to pull off without without it ever not seeming cohesive. Like the movie has all these, despite being this really dark, thrilling story of like the search for South Korea's first serial killer, like it also has these moments of levity that like are just again perfect moments to diffuse the tension, but it gets you right back into the story. You never feel like they're like distracting or anything like that. It's like it's got humor in it that just works, like in same way that Parasite does. Like again, it's just that's Bong's style. But definitely fits alongside a movie like Zodiac, or even a movie like Cure, which I was talking about. I just watched as like a movie where there are no answers. Like it's all about the search for answers where there are really no answers and like the futility of that sometimes. And yeah, just watching the two cops, Song Kang-ho and then Kim Sang-kyung play the two cops and the way that they like basically become each other by the end of the movie, because Song Kang-ho is like the bumbling country cop at the beginning of the movie who's just trying to like frame someone for the cameras, and Kim Sang-kyung is like he's the mercenary called in from the very professional guy called in from out of town to like actually professionally investigate this. And by the end, Song Kang-ho is the one like, hey, we need to try and actually get the right guy here, and Kim is the one who's like in their torture, like advocating for torture of the suspects. So it's just fascinating to watch like how the obsession takes over both of them in different ways. Also, the cop who just gets everyone with a flying drop kick is iconic. Again, talking about those moments of levity, haunting ending, but also just like some really pulsating, like there's a foot chase sequence that just like the score has like these percussion going and it just like it gets your heart pounding, but it has those procedural moments that I really like too, of people just like answering phone calls, looking at documents, like putting clues together in an office, and it's so satisfying, some of those moments when like the puzzle pieces do come together but that final piece never fits into place. Memories of Murder is an amazing movie. If you like mystery films, if you like stuff like Zodiac and you haven't seen this yet, what are you waiting for?
I finally got to watch it. I've been waiting to see this for a long time, obviously. Finally got to watch it just a couple months ago. And you and I talked about it previously, Scott. Like, I liked it, but I think for me, this is one where, kind of like how we were talking about In the Mood for Love a week or two ago, where just the way this story is told, the language barrier was a little bit of a hold up for me, where it just took me a second to get, or a few minutes to get caught up. And I think that kind of hurt the movie for me. I think on rewatch, I'm going to like a lot more when I know what's going on and, have that complete picture and just go back and, kind of absorb myself in it. But yeah, I love like that idea. Like you said, like there's opposing character arcs where they both start at one point and they end in the opposite spot. Is just really cool. And the ending's great. So yeah, I am looking forward to going back and rewatching this. And like I said, it's probably going to go up my estimation. Just haven't had a chance to yet. Has anybody else seen Memories of Murder?
Nope.
You're muted.
You're muted, right?
No, I haven't. I should see this film.
Yeah. I haven't really seen it since I got really into Bong Joon-ho, like post the train one.
Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer. Right. I was thinking like, it's something train, so I'm glad you guys corrected me there. I would have never.
I think it's on Hulu and Criterion Channel now. At least
It is on
the States
Criterion,
is.
for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So like I got into Korean movies because of Old Boy, like a long time ago or whatever, and I remember this one. I'm thinking like, oh, this is like a David Fincher movie. Like this is like Zodiac, and in my memory, it lives looking like Mindhunter or something visually. And I really want to revisit it, knowing how outside the lines Bong Joon-ho tends to color. You know.
All right, Spence 31.
My 31 is my favorite Wes Anderson movie, Moonrise Kingdom. Again, I'm a sucker for romance, and I think that like the central romance in this film is just one of my favorites. I think it captures just childhood love and infatuation so well. The idea of you're so swept up in all these big emotions that you're willing to drop everything and change your life because you've got like a taste of what you think the rest of your life is going to be about. I think that the two leads, who I'm like scrolling to find their names right now, and it's not coming up on Wikipedia.
Jared Gilman and Kara Hayward.
Thank you. They're not even starring on Wikipedia. This is fucking dumb. Are just so great at just providing the idea of like, honestly, a lot of people that like I saw myself in them, and also had a lot of friends who were like them. Just sort of like the kid who's just like really passionate about Boy Scouts and following through and doing everything, while also being a little above it all. And the girl who's sort of just dejected and not really connected to the world because of her shitty home life and everything going on there. And they find themselves as kindred spirits, and they feel like the entire world is against them because it sort of is, because they're making this awful decision. And that's just I think that Anderson has sort of lost his. I won't say like not entirely like lost his dramatic touch, but I think his films tend to be a little bit more distant from their lead characters more recently. But this feels to me like a continuation of like Rushmore and Royal Tenenbaums, where like you truly empathize and you're there and you understand every single emotions the characters are going through. Also, Anderson's style is always there. Incredible soundtrack is always there. Bill Murray is always there. This film is just like a wave of comfort for me, and it's another one where if I'm in a bad mood, I can just watch it and I can just see like first love, and I think that's just a beautiful thing to capture on film.
Yeah, this definitely is my favorite Wes Anderson. I've only seen it once, but I feel like he in general has a very much like a child likeness about him that he expresses in his work, and I mean that in a positive sense. So for him to make a movie about kids is like a perfect fit. I think the setting of this movie is really good, how it's on that island, and just yeah, I like it. I don't, like I said, it's not top tier for me, but I want to go back. I'm actually going to go back down and watch. I took my daughter to see French Dispatch, and that was her first Wes Anderson, so she wants to go back and watch them all now. So I'll probably go see them all, and I'll revisit this. So it could go up. I could like it better. Revisit, it's just not there now. Scott, you seem pretty excited about this one. What's everybody else feel about Moonrise Kingdom?
Yeah, this is my favorite Wes Anderson movie. Also, almost made the list. I'm looking forward to watching French Dispatch this week. Actually, though, I kind of think this is a lot different from his early movie. Like, I think Wes Anderson and Noah Baumbach, who have worked together on multiple movies, have the same trajectory where like their early movies kind of have a mean streak about them. Like Rushmore and Royal Tenenbaums, you really don't like a lot of the characters. But this movie, like, and his recent movies in general, he's become more of a softie, and Baumbach kind of has done the same thing now that he's pairing up with Gerwig in a lot of his movies, but he's become a softie. So I really like stuff like this, and Grand Budapest and Isle of Dogs, even, most recently, that is just a lot more. I mean, it has people you like in it. And I also think that the setting, like Kirk mentioned, the setting of like a scout camp is a perfect setting for a Wes Anderson movie. Like that just is the perfect setting for his aesthetic. So I absolutely love this movie. Another one of those that was like in my 110, 120 range that almost made the list.
I've come to learn that Wes Anderson is not for me most of the time. So I haven't seen this.
Yeah. Bruce Willis is really good in this movie. It's weird that he shows up, and like Bruce Willis usually isn't good in movies now, and he's really good in this. He shows up for a Wes Anderson movie. Yeah, I love this movie too. I can't help but feel that in the wake of Grand Budapest Hotel, this kind of can get put into dry run category for that movie, even though it shouldn't. It has its own thing. It's about kids. It's delightful, but yeah, good movie.
All right, Amaru, you're 31 for the night.
100% chalk for me. The Avengers. So I think ever since Infinity War and Endgame, there's been this talk about how people are going back and watching the Avengers and saying it doesn't hold up. It's not as good. It's not a great movie. I don't know what the fuck y'all are talking about. This movie is amazing. It delivered on something that a lot of people didn't think ever would be able to ever happen. And it delivered so beautifully. I sat and did the 12-hour run from Iron Man all the way through to the midnight showing of Avengers. And it delivered on all fronts. Putting together the team at the beginning of the film, saying, you go get the big guy. And Natasha says, Stark doesn't like me much. She's like, no, the other big guy. And you're just, it's fan service in a great way because it actually works. Joss Whedon, as much as a shithead, he just knows how to make characters work together and then knows how to gut punch you in the throat when he kills off Coulson. It's like peak Robert Downey Jr. and his quips. When Coulson comes in and Pepper Potts is like, oh, Phil, his first name is Agent. The little things here and there are so hilarious. I think Mark Ruffalo does a really good job of actually balancing that anger. And when he says, I'm always angry, delivers that really well. The Battle of New York is a great, really long action sequence. I think even though Hawkeye gets benched a little bit too much, I think the scene where he comes in and jacks the helicarrier is underrated for an action sequence because people forget within that is the first Thor and Hulk fight, which is just so great. And I haven't even talked about Loki yet. I'm burdened with glorious purpose, and Loki as a villain, Tom Hiddleston was born to play that character. And it's just peak Loki at the time. And you look back at it and for what the time it was and what it is still an amazing film. And it's beautiful. I love this film to death.
Yeah. I grew up reading comic books, and in the 90s, they started making all these comic book movies. And I think I hate about them so much is that they were all in their own self-contained little world, because that's not how comic books work. You always see, other people popping up, they're teaming up, and the fact that these were all so far removed from each other, I always hated that. And so when they started to build this idea of the Avengers, we knew it was coming, but to finally get it, to finally see all these characters in the movies, like in the comics, was just so joyous for my little comic book nerd heart. And they did it so well. Not only just the team itself, but the characters are all so well done. Their interactions are perfect. Just everybody gets their, almost everybody, like you mentioned Hawkeye, but almost everybody gets their chance to shine and really just do what they're great at. And just the fact that like they're antagonistic towards the beginning and they're fighting, that's just such a hallmark of these characters. If you go back and look at the history, that's always the idea that they're not supposed to be together. And again, you mentioned Joss Whedon. You look at something like Firefly, he's so good at that kind of bringing together people who really shouldn't be together and making it work. So yeah, I still love this movie. I still think it's great. Yeah, it got bigger and it got better with and Infinity War and Endgame. But this is still a solid movie in its own right. Everybody else on Avengers.
It's an above average MCU movie, which I understand why it makes lists for that reason, but y'all know my feelings on comic book movies. We've talked about some really good ones actually so far. I even have a couple on my list. But I think I actually do like Black Panther, which you had last week or the week before, a little bit more than this one. But it has fun moments. It was still Joss Whedon before he jumped off the deep end in terms of his dialogue. So that part of it works really well. Like he definitely knows how to write like the whole putting the team together stuff. And being the big Mark Ruffalo fan that I am, I love seeing his introduction to everything.
This does not work really. I think part of it's like I think the MCU sort of like moved on beyond it. I think looking back, it's sort of like unexciting. But also, I think it was just I think the biggest problem with it is honestly Whedon's direction. Like I think the script is fine. I don't have a lot of flaws with it, but the way he frames things is just weird. Like the entire film, I feel unsettled because like his shot composition, everything is just like inherently it takes me out of the movie, and also it sort of sexualizes Black Widow a lot in a really uncomfortable way. But like I think that it's the film is just like it's a series of like film things that should work, but the way it's put together, I think, makes it fall apart for me.
Oh yeah, I really like the Avengers. People forget how this seemed like an impossible task to put all these things together. It felt like you can't put like Thor and the Hulk in the same movie. That doesn't make any fucking sense. And I don't know, they pulled it off. Like it just made sense in the movie, and it wasn't a whole movie where they were like, "We're building a team." Like the movie just has a flow to it that you're like, "Oh, are they building a team?" Like halfway through the movie, it doesn't have that boring, rigid structure like Dirty Dozen style or whatever.
All right, Jake, you're gonna finish up for the night with your 31.
Okay, so instead of ending on a nice happy movie,
Oh gosh.
I realize I have a lot of bummers on my list now. I should really consider that. What's wrong with me? Am I just trying to torture Kirk here? Yeah, I really enjoy Manchester by the Sea, even though I think it's pretty shitty that Casey Affleck was even nominated for an Oscar that year because of some of the things that were coming out. They just shouldn't have, even though I think that Kenneth Lonergan's movie is amazing. It does something that it's always like it's somewhere in your mind when you think about it enough, and it's a horrible thing to think about, but that there are just some things that you're like you can never get over, where it's like there is that nightmare scenario where there's something where it's like, nah, like you don't get over this. Like, and I think a lot of people live with those things, a lot more people than and to dramatize it like that, and to instead of giving you the satisfying and then he got over this thing, it's about finding the joy in between all of these little quiet moments that he shares with his nephew, and it's just incredible how much that works for me.
It took me a long time to get to this movie because I knew what a bummer it was. And I watched it. I really liked it. I think Affleck's great. I think Lucas Hedges is great. I like their relationship, and I like that idea of, that new relationship forcing him to like kind of come back. Is he going to come back in like the real world or not? But yeah, this is just one I enjoy. But I probably won't go back to a lot because of just the content is not a lot of fun. But technically, there's a lot to like here. Everybody else on Manchester by the Sea.
This movie is amazing. And if it wasn't one of the most crushingly sad movies that I've ever seen, it would probably be one of my favorite movies. I own it on Blu-ray. I don't think I've ever opened the Blu-ray and actually watched it though, because it's just I have to work up the courage to do it because it's rough. But this is easily Kenneth Lonergan's best work. And yeah, Casey Affleck is very likely a terrible person, but his acting in the movie is incredible. And the police station scene, will just destroy you. And Michelle Williams also absolutely makes the most of her one scene in the movie. It's it's an
The
absolute
hardest scene.
emotional tour de force. For that reason, though, it's hard for me to say it's a favorite, but it is an amazing movie.
Speaking of movies that don't work, I don't get it. I really don't. So here's the thing. Fuck Lucas Hedges. He's not a good actor. I've liked him in one film that's way erased. Everything else, I really just... Actually, I started liking Lady Bird too. Everything else, I could not give a shit about him. He is not a convincing actor. But I think also this movie is like really manipulative. It's like tragedy porn, where it's like, here's everything and fuck you, be sad, be depressed. I'm making fucking art. I don't get it. I think Lonergan purposefully wrote like the most depressing movie possible for no real reason. It feels like it's trying to just make you feel emotions because you're sad. It's good. I need to revisit it because again, like this is very like hot-headed and like contrarian. But I don't see the purpose in a film like this because not really, to me, it's not telling a story. It's trying to get you to feel sympathy for getting an Oscar.
Don't think I'm gonna like this film, so I'm not watching it.
Definitely not a fun one, Rue. If you're going for fun, this isn't what you want to watch.
No.
It's a day ruiner for sure.
All right, that brings us to the end of the episode. I got to pick a winner here. Your winner this week, Amaru Moses.
Hey, I got it.
Amaru, you win because you're the only one who didn't have an actively bad movie on your list. Yeah, I think your low point was probably Enemy of the State, but like I said, even that's not a bad movie. It's just it's not maybe more than the top 10, but I mean, I like everything. Like I could watch all 10 of your movies and have a pretty good couple of days doing that. Yeah, you're definitely number one. Number two is Jake. Jake was close. Jake had some lower lows, but he had some pretty good highs too. Raging Bull, Wolf of Wall Street, The Fly. Good list, Jake. Again, you have less to complain about this week than some people did. Number three. This is rough. I think I got to give it to Spence.
Oh shit.
Yeah, Spence had some weaknesses on his, but he also had Popstar. He had Moonrise Kingdom, which I like. Zodiac is good. Blind Spotting is really solid. Didn't talk about Short Term 12, which I got to probably the best movie I got to watch this week for this list. Yeah, and then Scott. You've been treading that bottom, falling out the whole time. And finally got here. Yeah, you know why. But Days of Confused, Before Sunrise, Clueless. I mean, you had some good. Blair Witch is good, but yeah, you just couldn't dig yourself out of that hole. But yeah, that's it. Still anybody's game. Things can change a lot. Did last time. People got really hot in their top 30 and really changed the way things go. So stay tuned. We'll be in the 20 next week. I hope you all enjoy us. See you then.
Going to intimidate me. I'm entitled to my opinion.
Drunk, get angry. Come on, break the lousy cup. Ow! I hit my arm.
And not expect everybody to do everything.
I'm going there soon, you know.
Is that so? Where are you going?
Uruguay.
Well, you go Uruguay and I'll go mine.